owner of the US Mega Farmest video is Puremont para Intratnamiento Wino infringed Direcos de Autorenales. Los Direcos de la Novela y la Imagen del Autor Original, no reclamamos propiedad. No te gusta esperar y quieres escuchar este fanfic completo ahora? Suscríbete a nuestro Patreon, donde encontrarás los mejores fanfics. Chapter 51 Encounter. It would have been fine if he hadn't explained it, but it got even more lively after he explained it. Everyone was asking who was so rich. Kinzu replied, Hook, the president of Pingo. The group was quiet for a while, and then they started to criticize him. We tolerated your showing off, and we tolerated your pretentiousness, but we really couldn't tolerate it this time. Kinzu was overwhelmed and felt so aggrieved. To be honest, no one believed him this time. After struggling in a group for a few more times, Kinzu was defeated by a group of people. After quitting Penguin, Kinzu smiled. Fortunately, although these classmates were a little jealous of him, they didn't have the gap they imagined. Come to think of it, he wasn't developing in China. Although he had money, he couldn't bring them much help. If he borrowed money, he had to pay it back. Kinzu didn't have the feeling that once he became rich, people would come to borrow money and ask for help from others. Kinzu still felt a little regretful. He had thought about it. If anyone asked for help from others, he would accept it. They all came to herd cattle for him. After all, he was herding cattle in the United States, and no one could say anything. Putting aside these bad thoughts, Kinzu opened Mamo, which he hadn't used for a long time, and logged in. When he was at the ranch, Kinzu was interested in chatting on Mamo, but after searching nearby several times, he saw a lonely person on the screen, and the distance of some friends was often dozens of kilometers, which really made Kinzu feel helpless. It felt like he was in a deep mountain forest. Since then, Kinzu never played Mamo at the ranch again. In addition, he didn't have many friends in the United States, except Anna. When he first arrived in New York, he couldn't sleep at night and joined a few Mamo groups, but he never chatted. So a penguin was enough for Kinzu to contact his friends. When he opened Mamo, Kinzu unexpectedly found that someone had privately chatted with him. Who was it? He opened the message and saw that it was a Chinese person. His Mamo name was 3 o'clock in the morning. Kinzu didn't need to look at it to know that this guy must be a nightclub playboy. He looked at the message and found that it was an invitation to participate in Patient. Kinzu's interest was piqued. Kinzu had participated in similar activities in China before, but at the time he always sat in the corner, silently watching those handsome men and beautiful women playing and fighting, without any sense of existence. What was the reason? He had no money in his pocket, was not strong enough, and had no confidence to approach them. But now it was different. Who dared to show off their wealth in front of him? He looked at the Patient's introduction and found that this was a Chinese hometown group in the United States. However, there were also many Americans who liked Chinese culture in the group. According to the introduction, the meeting address was not far from here. Kinzu immediately became motivated and jumped up from the sofa. Kinzu tidied his clothes, picked up the car keys and prepared to go out. Seeing that Dale was also ready to follow him, Kinzu quickly stopped her with a serious face. Hey, Dale, I'm just going to meet a friend. There's no danger. You go to bed first and don't have to follow me. Seeing Dale return to the room with an understanding look on her face, Kinzu was relieved. What a joke, I asked you to follow me to pick up girls. He didn't know that Dale was despising him in his heart at this time. Just say it directly when you go out to be cool and make friends. Dale was very disdainful of this. She didn't mind the romanticism of men, because when she was a soldier participating in the mission, she had seen too many dirty things, and had a deep understanding of the private lives of those high-ranking officials and rich people. She didn't expect men to be loyal like some simple girls. Besides, this is Europe and the United States, and these things are not taken very seriously. Only a few believers can stick to their beliefs and remain pure. Kinzu knew nothing about this, and he was complacent about fooling Dale. He drove his McLaren and rushed all the way to his destination, the Peninsula Hotel in New York. Don't get me wrong, Kinzu didn't go to get a room, he went to the Ling Long Lounge on the 23rd floor of the Peninsula Hotel. After driving for 20 minutes, Kinzu arrived at the Peninsula Hotel. After parking the car, Kinzu took the elevator straight up to the 23rd floor and came to the door of the Ling Long Lounge. After calling at 3 a.m. to find out about the booth, Kinzu pushed the door and walked in. This is a Chinese-style bar full of the old SH style of the 1930s. It is said that the lounge is designed according to the luxurious mansion of the famous socialite Ling Long girl in the last century. After entering the door, looking at the sofas made of Chinese mahogany bed frames on both sides and the dignified Chinese murals of beautiful women, Qin Zhu felt a sense of time and space confusion, as if he was in the old SH's 10-mile foreign land. After finding the booth, Qin Zhu had no time to look around, and suddenly heard a familiar and slightly surprised voice. "Hey, Qin, why are you here?" Qin Zhu was stunned. "No way, my buddy finally came out to pick up a girl. How could he meet an acquaintance? God, are you playing tricks on me?" Looking over in the direction of the voice, it turned out to be Mobaka, a big foreign horse, and a Latin American beauty with long brown hair and a hot body, sitting in this booth, looking at Qin Zhu in surprise. Qin Zhu greeted Mobaka in surprise and asked, "Mobaka, how come you are here? Have you finished your design?" Mobaka smiled embarrassedly and said, "No, I came here to find my senior sister. By the way, Qin, let me introduce you. This is my senior sister, Onid Doyle. She is now a graduate student at the School of Design at New York University. I am here to ask my senior sister for help." Qin Zhu was a little speechless. This girl was really serious. She stretched out her hand and shook hands with Onid and said, "Hello, I'm Qin Zhu. You can just call me Qin. It's nice to meet you." After that, she smiled politely and sat down next to Mobaka. Onid also shook hands with Qin Zhu politely and said politely, "I'm Onid Doyle. You can just call me Onid. It's nice to meet you. I've heard Mobaka talk about you." She really didn't lie. When Mobaka came to her yesterday to design an indoor fish tank, she mentioned Qin Zhu, a young billionaire from the East. Today, she realized how young this young man was. She couldn't help but feel lucky that she came to this party today and brought Mobaka, who didn't want to come. You know, knowing a billionaire in the United States is still a great help to her. Qin Zhu smiled politely and said nothing. At this time, a young Chinese man about 1.7 meters tall and a little handsome came over and stretched out his hand and asked, "Is that Qin?" "I'm 3 o'clock. Qin Zhu shook hands with him and replied, "It's me, Qin Zhu. Nice to meet you. I've been in the United States for so long, but I rarely see Chinese. Are you Chinese or Chinese American?" After sitting down next to Qin Zhu, 3 o'clock said, "I'm an international student from FJ. My name is Bin Yan." After that, he pointed to several other people and introduced them to Qin Zhu. There were men and women, and they all looked average. I heard that they were all students from nearby universities and were in the same group, so occasionally everyone would get together. Qin Zhu stood up and shook hands with them one by one, and then sat down next to Mobaka again. The other men, including Bin Yan, were a little jealous. Such a beautiful foreign horse is not something you can see every time you get together. This time, this guy was in a bad mood, so he was coaxed out by him to drink. He didn't expect that Qing Yajin would show up halfway. If he had known, he wouldn't have asked him to come. Thank you all for your support and criticism. Liu Un will continue to work hard to improve. Thank you for your support. Chapter 52 Party. Qin Zhu ignored the envy and jealousy of the crowd. This was the effect he wanted. He sat down proudly and started chatting with Onid, from ranch life to the requirements of fish tank design. At this time, Bin Yan came over with 2 glasses of wine, smiled and looked at Qin Zhu and said, "Qin, come on, let's go." Qin Zhu took the glass and said hesitantly, "I drove here, so I won't drink." Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Mobaka, the girl. "Qin, how can you come to the party without drinking? At most, you can take a taxi back." He glared at her, but she stuck out her tongue at Qin Zhu with an innocent expression. Seeing that Mobaka said this, Qin Zhu couldn't pretend anymore. He didn't plan to go back before he came. At most, he could get a room here. He just pretended to refuse. Qin Zhu picked up the glass and looked at it. It was Johnny Walker, which is commonly known as Black Label in China. The domestic price is about 200 yuan, but it is much cheaper here. The wine is already mixed with Sprite. I added some ice cubes to the glass, which is very easy to drink. But the after effect is very strong, which will make you drink too much without realizing it. He raised his glass, clinked glasses with Bin Yan, and drank it all in one gulp. "Refreshing, come on, another glass," seeing Qin Zhu so refreshing. Bin Yan filled Qin Zhu's glass with a smile. Qin Zhu smiled and accepted it, and clinked glasses with him again. Then he put down the glass, looked at Mobaka and Onid and said with a smile, "Let's play dice." The two of them also smiled and nodded, and then the four of them gathered around the bar and picked up the dice cup to play. In the first round, Qinzhou shook 4 5s and won 3. Qinzhou called first. Looking at Zhengbingyan, who was playing next, Qinzhou raised his eyebrows and said, 4 people, we have 0 straights and 6 leopards. 6 people start calling, how about 1 cup each time? Zhengbingyan nodded indifferently. He couldn't let this guy go outstanding today. He had to knock him down. He was too arrogant. He really didn't take me, a nightclub prodigal, seriously. As for Mobika and Onid, they also nodded in agreement. They thought much simpler, especially Onid. She was in a bad mood today and came out to play. Now she has Mobika to accompany her. With such a young rich man around, drinking is nothing. Seeing that the 3 of them were fine, Qinzhou directly called 10 6s. Sure enough, Zhengbingyan didn't dare to open it and added 1. However, when he went around and came back to Qinzhou, he was a little bit embarrassed. If he didn't do well, he would die before he even got his start. Is this considered shooting himself in the foot? After gritting his teeth, he called 14 5s. When it was Zhengbingyan's turn, he looked at Qinzhou with pride and decisively chose not to believe it. Several people opened the dice cups. Qinzhou looked at the dice cups that everyone opened. Fortunately, Zhengbingyan had 3 5s. Mobika had 4 5s, and Onid also had 3 5s. Adding Qinzhou's own 4, there were exactly 14. Zhengbingyan's body stiffened for a moment. This was fine. He shrugged helplessly and took up the wine glass and drank it all. He continued to start the second round. I don't know if Qinzhou was lucky today, or if Qinzhou had been lucky this month. He got the leopard 6. This time it was Zhengbingyan's turn to call. He looked at Qinzhou and called 6 6s. Mobika and Onid followed with a smile and added 1. When it was Qinzhou's turn, Qinzhou also added 1 this time. He added another round of 1. When it came to Qinzhou, there were already 12, and no one opened it. Qinzhou smiled and called 15 directly. Zhengbingyan immediately opened the dice cup with a confident look on his face. He only hit 3 6s. He really didn't believe that he could get 15. However, the result disappointed him greatly. After seeing the leopard opened by Qinzhou, he consciously picked up the wine glass and drank it all. However, it seemed that Qinzhou's luck had ended, and he lost more than 10 hands. Everyone drank a lot. Especially Onid. With the unconscious cooperation of the two, it was a bit too much, and her delicate little face was red. Fortunately, Mobika didn't drink much. After playing a few more words, Zhengbingyan saw that the atmosphere was almost right, so he ended the battle and gathered everyone in the booth. Qinzhou had time to look at the other people at this time. In addition to Qinzhou, Zhengbingyan, Mobika, and Onid, there were 7 other people, 4 men and 3 women. Qinzhou was a little surprised. Why are all the girls here foreigners? Isn't it a gathering of fellow villagers? Looking at those who came, there was no foreign man, they were all Chinese guys. Qinzhou understood a little. It seems that this is a group doing glory to the country. Looking at this group of animals constantly urging people to drink, it is not difficult to see that the real purpose is not the wine, but the girls. Getting drunk is good for that, isn't it? At this time, Zhengbingyan smiled obscenely and said, guys. Then today's game of passing the note will begin. Passing the note? What the hell is this? Qinzhou said that he had never played it in China. After a pause, he took out a napkin and said, old rules, pass this napkin to the next person with your mouth. Remember, you can't use your hands, and whoever has no more notes will have to drink. After saying this, the guy laughed obscenely again, and saw him walk directly to the foreign girl with some freckles sitting at the outermost booth, biting his mouth and pouting over. Watching the girl bit the napkin without shame and pulled it off, and then turned to the next man. Qinzhou understood a little bit, isn't this just taking advantage of the girl openly? No wonder these guys separated the girls so far, it turned out to be premeditated. However, Qinzhou looked at the 2 girls next to him. The girl on the other side of him was also a black girl, and then he looked at the 3 men between the black girl and the other girl. Qinzhou said that he was really not here to spoil the show. Seeing Mobika lowering her head shyly, Qinzhou also laughed obscenely. However, what Qinzhou did not expect was that someone was so bold that a man walked over directly and sat down between Mobika and Onid. You know, the 2 of them were sitting very close to each other. Sitting down was no different from sitting directly in Onid's arms. Who made her confused now? Qinzhou was furious. You are so bold. I haven't enjoyed this kind of treatment yet. How can I let you get ahead of me? He walked over directly and grabbed the guy by the collar. Now Kinzu has practiced free fighting for a few days. The force was obviously much greater. How could these college boys resist it? After being grabbed by Kinzu's collar, the guy shouted fiercely, "What are you doing? Do you know where this is? How dare you make trouble here?" Kinzu ignored his words and slapped him. "You are so bold." This slap also scared Mobuka. This bar is not a place for easy trouble. He quickly stood up and advised, "Clean, let him go. There is no loss." Zinbin also saw the situation here, and his head became big. Yang Zhu. How dare you be so bold? Haven't you heard that he is a rich man? I gave up those 2 top girls and ran over to hook up with the school girl. How dare you rush forward? Thank you for your support. I recommend a novel by a great author. It is very popular now. The Perspective Boy of the School Beauty. Those who like this type of novel can go and have a look. Chapter 53 Passing the Tissue. Kinzu ignored Mobuka's dissuasion, dragged this daring guy over, pinched his neck, and asked in a low voice, "What did you say? I can't hear you." At this time, Zinbin also came over. Although he was very disdainful of this daring guy, after all, it was his own event, so he quickly persuaded him. "Kinzu, don't be angry. He drank too much, don't bother with him." Kinzu looked at this boy who was shaking and no longer tough after being slapped, and sighed helplessly. He dared to have such courage to have erotic thoughts. I really don't know if his head is filled with white tadpoles. Kinzu suddenly lost interest in bullying him. He threw this guy to his buttocks and ignored him. He walked to the middle of the 2 women and sat down and said with a smile, "Is it not scary?" Mobuka shook her head. Without saying anything, she moved aside with a red face, leaving enough space for Kinzu. Kinzu looked at Onid, who was still a little confused, and asked, "Onid, are you okay? Are you drunk?" Onid shook her head and said, "Clean, I'm fine, just a little dizzy. Let's continue." Yang Zhu, who fell to the ground, looked at Kinzu with hatred and walked directly to the door of the bar. Zinbin looked at Yang Fan's disappearing figure and breathed a sigh of relief. It's good that he left. There are not enough girls. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel happy again. Turning around, Zinbin was about to announce the continuation of the game, and suddenly heard hurried footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw that Yang Fan, who was thought to have left, came over with a few black security guards. At this time, he heard Yang Fan excitedly talking to the security guard. Zinbin felt that his eyes were dark. It's over. Things are going to get out of hand. What does Yang Zhu want to do? Kinzu also saw the situation over there. Looking at the guy who was excitedly complaining to the security guard, he was disdainful. With this courage, I really don't know how he dared to have such a big mind. Onid, who was standing next to him, was a little worried and sober. She had heard that the bars here were very strict and that those who made trouble would not end well. Just as he was thinking about it, several black security guards had already arrived. Seeing Yang Fan pointing at Kinzu excitedly, the leading black man politely asked, "Sir, this gentleman accused you of hitting him, is that right?" Hearing that their leader was so polite to this guy who beat people, the other security guards were stunned. They had been restless for a few months and their hearts had cooled down. Kinzu was very happy to see that the security guard had such a good attitude. He didn't expect that the quality of the security guards here was so high. Well, he would come here often in the future. After thinking about it, he took out the black gold card and handed it to the security leader, saying, "Take him to the hospital for a checkup. I will reimburse the medical expenses." The black security guard wanted to say something, but after seeing the card clearly under the light, he couldn't help but feel lucky for his decision. Sure enough, he was a rich man. He had just seen Kinzu wearing Gucci clothes. He felt that this must not be a simple person. At least it is better to offend a poor student than to offend him. Now seeing this card, he was even more glad for his choice. He had seen this card from the boss, but the boss's card was only low level. The boss also specifically instructed that if anyone with this card came to the bar, he must be treated well. If something went wrong, he would have to pack up and leave. Thinking of this, the black security guard politely returned the card to Kinzu and said, "Sir, there may be some misunderstanding. We will ask this gentleman to leave now. Sorry to bother you." After that, he quickly dragged Yang Zhu away. Zinbin Yan's heart was pounding as he watched from the side. Seeing Yang Zhu being taken away by the black security guard, he was afraid that something might happen, so he quickly followed him. The eyes of the few people who stayed behind changed when they looked at Yang Zhu. Who is this person? A guard made the bar security retreat. You know, the security guards here are all very powerful veterans, not those small hooligans. Onid was also a little curious. Looking at the Centurion card that Yang Zhu had not put away yet, she couldn't help but blushed and said, "Clean, thank you so much this time. But what kind of card is this? It's so powerful." Yang Zhu raised the corner of his mouth with some pride, handed over the Centurion card, and explained, "This is the Centurion Black Gold card of American Express Group." Onid covered her mouth in surprise, and Mobeka was also shocked. They both looked at this legendary black card in surprise, and they were a little stunned for a while. It was Onid who reacted first. She carefully took the Centurion Black card and asked, "Clean, is this the Centurion Black Gold card that says you can't get an invitation without a deposit of $100 million? Yang Zhu smiled. He thought so a month ago, but he learned the details after taking over the ranch, so he said, "It's not as exaggerated as you think. This card is divided into different levels. The low-level one has a deposit of $10 million and a monthly working capital of about $1 million, and you can get an invitation." After saying that, he put the card away, and then smiled obscenely. "Okay, the flies are gone. Let's continue drinking." Onid reluctantly moved her eyes away from the black gold card, and couldn't help but roll her eyes at Yang Zhu charmingly. Drinking, it seems that this guy really wants to continue playing games. They didn't deliberately lower their voices when they were chatting here just now, so Zhenbingyan, who was standing next to them, heard it clearly, and looked at Yang Zhu with a little more envy and fear. Sometimes having too much money can really crush a person. When he heard him say to continue drinking, he immediately smiled and asked everyone to continue playing games. The other people were also quite respectful. There was nothing he could do. He looked outside and saw that those who didn't give him face had been dragged out. Zhenbingyan took another napkin and started again from the freckled schoolgirl. Seeing the napkin slowly getting smaller in other people's mouths, Mobeka was a little nervous and clenched his fists. What if it was her turn and there was no more? However, what comforted Mobeka was that the person sitting in front of her was a girl. It was a man just now, but he didn't know when it became a girl. Yang Zhu watched the napkin getting smaller little by little, and the smile on his mouth became more and more intense. When he saw that it was the girl in front of Mobeka, there was only a coin-sized napkin left. Yang Zhu could no longer control his smile. His mouth was almost grinning to his ears, and Onid kept laughing beside him. Mobeka naturally took the tissue from the girl's mouth. Their lips touched each other and he didn't think anything was wrong. However, after turning around and looking at Yang Zhu's grinning face, he couldn't keep calm anymore. "Thank you for the 500 starting coins reward from Shining Baby 1973. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your recommendation votes from all the book friends. Liu thanks you." Chapter 54. The game continues. Mobeka looked at Yang Zhu hesitantly, not knowing what to do. In front of so many people, it was really embarrassing to let her take the initiative. Yang Zhu saw that this would not work. Even in the open United States, girls could not take the initiative. If girls were too shy and could not let go, then his welfare would be ruined. Thinking of this, Yang Zhu could not sit still, so he directly reached out and put his arm around Mobeka's shoulders, and slowly moved his head closer. After a long time, until everyone started to make a noise out of jealousy, Yang Zhu remembered that he was still playing with the paper towel. Letting go of Mobeka, whose face was a little red, Yang Zhu looked down. Wow, the paper towel had already gone away. With an awkward smile, Yang Zhu had no choice but to raise his glass and signal to everyone. He raised his head and poured himself another glass, and the feeling of being a little tipsy became even stronger. After drinking, he continued to play that game. This time, it started from Yang Zhu's side. Yang Zhu bit the tissue and passed it to Onid. Onid looked up and took off a large piece effortlessly. Then she turned to Zhenbingyan. Zhenbingyan didn't have the courage to take the tissue from Onid's mouth. Although there was still a large piece, who knew if the guy would be petty and hold a grudge? If he found a reason to beat him up, it would not be worth it. He looked reluctantly at Onid's sexy and seductive red lips biting the tissue. He looked at Yang Zhu, who was staring at him fiercely without blinking. Zhenbingyan decisively asked the freckled schoolgirl to take Onid's tissue. Seeing Zhenbingyan was so tactful, Yang Zhu smiled with satisfaction, waved to the waiter, and asked him to take away all the unopened black squares on the table. Xinbinyan was stunned and asked, "Brother Clean, what are you doing?" Qin Zhu waved his hand and said with a smile, "It's fate that we meet. I'll treat you today. Let's drink something good." Then he looked at the male waiter and asked, "Do you have any good champagne here? Please change all of them to champagne for us." The male waiter looked at Qin Zhu in surprise and felt relieved. He also saw what happened just now. At the time, he was very surprised. How could the security manager be so polite to such a table of guests who drank cheap wine? Now it seems that there is a big sponsor here. Thinking of this, he immediately cheered up and began to introduce it in a torrent of words. "Dear sir, hello. We have most of the more famous champagnes in the world here. For example, Dom Perignon Pink Champagne King, Mott, Premier French Champagne, Princess Louis Crystal, Krug, Salon Champagne, etc." Qin Zhu was a little confused. So many brands. He had only seen champagne on TV. He had never drunk it before. Qin Zhu coughed twice, waved his hand, interrupted the waiter and said, "Well, introduce it. I can't remember the brand just by saying it." The waiter was a little dazed, turned his head and looked at Xinbinyan and others who looked confused, seemed to understand something, smiled meaningfully, and introduced. "Sir, Dom Perignon was founded by the French monk Dom Pierre Perignon in 1668. At present, Dom Perignon belongs to the world's largest luxury group, Louis Mott Hennessy, LVMH. Its noble quality and rich taste have created a legend in the champagne world and elevated the winemaking process to a new realm of winemaking art aesthetics. Moet and Chanton is a world-renowned champagne brand. Moet and Chanton is a famous French wine with a history of more than 250 years. It was founded by Count Robert Jean de Vogue in 1743. For more than 2 centuries, it has been a tribute wine for many European royal families. Princess Louis Champagne is located in Reims, France, with 506 acres of vineyards, which only grow Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, 2 legal grapes. The microclimate in the vineyard is quite stable, so the champagne can maintain a consistent standard regardless of the year. The history of the winery can be traced back to 1776, when it was founded by the father and son of Du Bois. It was not until 1833 that Mr. Louis Leger inherited the industry from his uncle and the winery was renamed Princess Louis Champagne. It was under his leadership that Princess Louis Champagne gradually became famous and began to produce champagne. Okay. Qin Zhu nodded with satisfaction when he heard it. This waiter is good. He can actually remember so many brands. Glancing at the people around him, they all looked dumbfounded. Qin Zhu smiled triumphantly and said, "Bring us Mott, let's have a champagne boat first." The waiter nodded happily, a little dry-mouthed, took the $200 tip from Qin Zhu, and immediately ran to place the order attentively. This was equivalent to his salary for several days. Seeing the waiter prepare the wine, Qin Zhu smiled and said, "Change the taste, don't you mind?" Everyone shook their heads hurriedly. At this time, Xinbinyan also realized the benefits of having a rich man present. There is no cheap wine in the bar. Whether it is real wine or not, at least the price inside is several times higher than outside. Qin Zhu's casual consumption is tens of thousands of dollars, which makes Xinbinyan envious and jealous. However, since there is good wine to drink, he doesn't bother with him. After comforting himself, Xinbinyan immediately invites everyone to play games together. This time, the note was gone before it reached Mobaka. It was a small piece of paper about the size of a finger in a boy's mouth. If he took it again, a kiss would be inevitable. Under the boy's expectant gaze, the girl sitting below him calmly picked up the wine glass and drank it all. The boy's heart was broken. He looked at Qin Zhu with resentment and couldn't help but sigh, "Why are people so different?" Since the girl took the initiative to admit defeat and drink, it started from her again. Below her was Mobaka. Looking at the almost complete piece of tissue in Mobaka's mouth, Qin Zhu rolled his eyes and smiled slyly. Qin Zhu's smile made Mobaka panic. This guy, wouldn't he be so excessive? It's still so big. If he dares to take advantage of me again, I will definitely push him away, yes, definitely. Qin Zhu didn't know that Mobaka was thinking so much. Looking at the large piece of tissue in front of him, Qin Zhu smiled mysteriously and opened his mouth to bite it. Mobaka watched Qin Zhu's big mouth kissing her again, and she closed her eyes in fear. After waiting for a while, she still didn't feel the intoxicating taste, so she opened her eyes curiously. At this time, Qin Zhu just raised his head, and Mobaka felt a little strange. Isn't he kissing her, nor biting the tissue? What does he want to do? Just thinking about it, she suddenly felt as if she saw something at the corner of Kinzu's mouth. After taking a closer look, Mobica almost fainted. How can a person be so shameless? Thank you for your support. Thank you for your support. This is also an author friend of mine. The title of his book is My Food, a Little Fox Fairy. Friends who are short of books can go and taste it. Today's update is probably just this chapter. Liu continues to type. Chapter 55. After drinking, looking at the white edge the size of a fingernail stuck on Kinzu's lips, and then looking at the almost intact tissue of her mouth, Mobica really wanted to pinch his neck and ask him if he could be more shameless. Isn't it obvious that he wants to take advantage? And he did it so blatantly. Especially, seeing this guy still looking smug, Mobica had the urge to kill for the first time. Kinzu ignored Mobica's contemptuous eyes. He felt very good now. The feeling of being slightly drunk made him more courageous than ever before. Turning around, looking at Onid, who was in a daze, his face showed an expression of waiting to see a good show. Onid looked at Kinzu with an empty mouth and turned to look at her, with a blank face. What's going on? Clean, isn't it your turn to bite the tissue? Why are you looking at me? Kinzu's expression froze when he heard this, and he pointed to the small piece of white at the corner of his mouth with a somewhat embarrassed look. I've done it, now it's your turn. Question mark. Onid opened her eyes wide, stared at the corner of Kinzu's mouth and looked carefully. It seemed that there was something there. She leaned forward and looked at the napkin with a small corner missing from Mobica's mouth. The corner of Onid's mouth twitched a little. Are you so shameless? Looking at this guy's smug expression, Onid now had only one thought in her mind: we must not let this guy succeed so easily. Coincidentally, the waiter also brought the champagne over this time. Everyone picked up the champagne and started to make a noise together, even Mobica started to make a noise. Maybe she also felt that she was taken advantage of and suffered a little, so she wanted to drag another person into the water. Listening to the noise around her, Onid became more determined. So, a scene that made Kinzu feel extremely heartbroken appeared. Onid picked up the champagne that had just been poured and drank it down with her head tilted back. After drinking, she put the glass down. She picked up the tissue and wiped the corner of her mouth indifferently. Seeing everyone's strange looks, especially Mobica's undisguised ridicule, Kinzu was a little embarrassed. This little girl, it seems that she needs to be punished. Fortunately, Zinbinyan is a good man. He took out another napkin and said, "Come on, continue. Let's have fun today. Don't go home until you are drunk." Kinzu looked at this guy with some appreciation. This guy is good and has a future. Ignoring Kinzu's sigh, the game continued, and the napkins were passed from mouth to mouth. This time, Kinzu ran out of it again, and Kinzu threw Mobica down again without any hesitation. Seeing her breathless appearance, Kinzu was proud. "You little guy, let's see if you dare to laugh at me again." Mobica rolled her eyes at the guy, and after he finished drinking the champagne, she took out another tissue and handed it to him, muttering to herself, "I'll give you a whole one this time, let's see if you can take advantage of me." Kinzu took the tissue, looked at Onid's evasive eyes, pondered for a while, and laughed slyly. Under the gaze of everyone, he held the tissue in his mouth and handed it to Onid. After seeing that Kinzu did not play any tricks this time, everyone couldn't help but sigh in disappointment. Even Mobica was a little surprised. This was not like him. Onid looked at the whole tissue in front of her, and her mood relaxed, but she was inexplicably disappointed. Did she go too far? Or was she unattractive? Onid, who was a little dazed, opened her mouth and reached for the tissue, instinctively pulled it back, but suddenly felt something was wrong. She smacked her lips. Nothing. Looking up at Kinzu's smirk and the tissue that was obviously shorter, Onid was a little puzzled. She could have bitten it, right? Everyone was also stunned. Mobica stared at her in surprise. What's going on? Can you bite it empty? However, the next moment, everyone saw it clearly. When Onid bit the tissue again, Kinzu's mouth moved and swallowed a small part of the tissue directly. And Onid was under the tissue, so of course it was empty again. Mobica curled her lips with some contempt. Sure enough, it was still like this. I knew it. How could this big pervert miss such a good opportunity to take advantage? Onid now understood what was going on, and glared at this guy with some shame and anger. It was too bad to make a fool of yourself in front of so many people. However, she felt a little happy inexplicably in her heart. She was still attractive. Putting aside some strange ideas in her head, Onid tried a few more times, but still failed to get it. Looking at Kinzu in front of her, Onid gritted her teeth with some hatred, and pressed directly towards him with an impulse in her head. Kinzu was pounced by Onid and fell on the booth, and was stunned for a moment. Is this the rhythm of reverse push? Caught off guard, Kinzu only had time to spit out the tissue, and before he could clean the saliva around his mouth, he was, ahem. Feeling the fragrance that was different from Mobika, Kinzu did not hesitate at the moment, and reached out to hug Onid tightly. The people who were making a fuss around were also dry-mouthed, and some boys also followed Kinzu, pounced on the girl next to them, and started to bite. Kinzu kissed until Onid was almost out of breath, and then he let her go. Looking at Onid, who was looking at him breathlessly, Kinzu smiled at her proudly, and see if you dare to provoke me again, this is the end of provoking me. The whole party lasted until 2 o'clock in the morning. 11 people drank a lot of black labels and 2 champagne boats and 12 bottles of champagne. In the end, Kinzu was half asleep and half awake. However, Kinzu still supported his body, supported Mobika and Onid, and followed everyone out of the bar. After making an appointment with everyone to meet again next time and saying hello to Zmbinyan, he watched them leave in pairs and alone. Kinzu looked at Mobika and Onid, who were supported by him. Can he go back like this? It seems that it is a little different from what he expected. Helplessly, he had to stagger and support the 2 people to the lobby of the New York hotel. With the help of the female receptionist, Kinzu helped the 2 women into the room in a daze. Let the waitress help the 2 women clean up. Kinzu dazedly went into another room, barely cleaned up in the bathroom, and fell asleep on the bed. In a daze, Kinzu felt as if he had entered a very warm world, just like being in his mother's arms when he was a child. He also felt as if he was floating on the water, paddling and paddling, but he could not reach the end, until a gust of cold wind blew. Kinzu shivered, and then he felt that the world had calmed down again. Chapter 56 New York Auto Show, Part 1. In the early morning, the soft and bright sunlight shone through the floor-to-ceiling glass of the hotel into the luxurious suite of the hotel. The whole room looked golden and particularly dazzling. The suite was quiet at this time. The white and white bed was in a mess at this time. Even half of the quilt fell on the wine-red wool carpet. On the bed, Kinzu, who felt a little dazzling under the bright sunlight, woke up from his sleep and slowly opened his still confused eyes. As soon as he woke up, Kinzu felt that he was about to explode and could no longer think normally. As for why Mobika appeared here? What happened at the end of yesterday? Kinzu didn't care anymore. In this case, let's do it again, otherwise his first time would be lost in vain. After shamelessly finding an excuse for himself, Kinzu began to act. With such a big movement, Mobika certainly couldn't help feeling it. After Kinzu pinched her for the second time, she woke up. But there was no way. She didn't dare to face Kinzu now, and didn't know why he was so crazy yesterday. Was it because he drank too much? Mobika himself was somewhat puzzled by his madness yesterday. Yesterday, after Kinzu went back to sleep, Mobika and Onid were helped to the bathroom by the waitresses one by one to Washington. The key point is that after washing, Mobika was actually sent to Kinzu's bed by the damn waitress. The following things were logical. Mobika could not remember the following things. These were all from Mobika's already very vague memory, but even these made Mobika blush. If I remember correctly, it seems that I took the initiative yesterday. Although I don't hate him and it doesn't matter to gift him, it's too fast. However, just when Kinzu was happy, a female voice suddenly came from the side. I say, are you done yet? You started to toss and turn early in the morning. Do you want to let me sleep? The sudden female voice scared Kinzu. He was so angry in his heart. Who is so ignorant? This is good, and the old driver is embarrassed again. He said he was winning glory for the country, but he was beaten up as soon as he took action. Turning his head, Kinzu was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped. He saw Onid lying on the other side looking at them. The healthy complexion unique to Latin Americans was fully revealed. At this time, she was half lying on the bed with one hand, and her long brown hair was draped behind her head. Kinzu looked a little silly, but his body instinctively revealed his inner excitement. Mobika was also shocked at first, but after thinking about it for a while, he was relieved. According to the waiter's behavior at the time, she must have been sent in not long after him. Mobika couldn't help laughing, and pushed Kinzu, who was still silly, and said, "Clean, Onid misses you too, you should go and comfort her." Kinzu was no longer polite after hearing this. Anyway, it was estimated that everything that should and shouldn't have happened last night had happened. Since that was the case, then he didn't need to be polite. So he got off Mobika. After covering her with a quilt, he rolled over and hugged on it. He took out his cell phone, looked at the missed calls, called Dale, and explained to her. Dale, who had been pacing anxiously in the hotel room, was relieved. She was really worried because there was no news from Kinzu all morning. After complaining for a few words, Dale asked about Kinzu's schedule for today. Kinzu thought about it and felt that there was nothing to do. Besides, tomorrow was Sunday, and it was time to fulfill the travel plan agreed with Anna. Just as he was about to ask Dale to pack up and go back to the ranch in the afternoon, Kinzu suddenly remembered something important, so he changed his words. Well, you can rest in the hotel. I'll go to the New York Auto Show in the afternoon and buy an SUV for transportation. After rejecting Dale's request to accompany him, Kinzu hung up the phone and took out the cigarettes he had just bought yesterday from his pocket. After taking out a cigarette and lighting it, Kinzu took a deep puff and then blew out a smoke ring. He has come to his senses from his desires and is now thinking about what happened today. Although he feels very good today and he finally got rid of the title of virgin, everything that happened today was too weird. Everything else is easy to explain, but looking at the two figures in the bathroom now, their relationship is a bit weird. Leewoon has modified what was blocked today. I don't know if it will pass. Thanks to Yeshuan Shiji and Kanai Wankyo for their support. Leewoon shamelessly comes to ask for recommendations and rewards again to comfort Leewoon's blocked heart. Chapter 57 New York Auto Show, Part 2 Kinzu didn't figure it out, but fortunately, Kinzu wasn't the type to get stuck in a rut. If he couldn't figure it out, he wouldn't think about it. Thinking of this, Kinzu laughed a few times, put out the cigarette butt in the ashtray on the bedside table, climbed out of bed, and rushed into the bathroom naked. 2 exclamations came from the bathroom, but as time went by, it was already past 1 in the afternoon when they came out of the shower. Arriving in the living room, the 3 of them sat on the sofa, snuggling. Listening to the protesting sounds from their stomachs, Kinzu realized that the 3 of them had not eaten anything yet. No wonder they felt hungry. Bai smiled and looked at the 2 girls and said, "Are you all hungry? What do you want to eat?" Mobika rubbed her belly, looked at Onid innocently and asked, "Senior, what do you want to eat?" Onid thought seriously for a while, then said, "Whatever, I don't care." Kinzu patted his head helplessly. Forget it, he wouldn't ask anymore. He was too hungry to go out, so he just ate something. He picked up the phone and called the hotel front desk. After ordering a few steaks and snacks, Kinzu hung up the phone, walked to their sofa, sat between the 2 girls and looked at them. He didn't know what to say for a moment. The key point was that after thinking for a while, Kinzu was about to speak, but he heard Mobika ask beside him, "Clean, do you have something to do in New York this time? When will you go back?" Kinzu sat on the sofa, reached out and hugged the slender waists of the 2 girls from behind, looked at Mobika's blue eyes with a little expectation, and said with a smile, "I came here to attend a cocktail party. I should go back to the ranch in the afternoon. What about you? Will you go back with me?" Mobika shook her head in disappointment and said, "It will take me a few days to go back. I need to discuss the design of your fish tank with my senior." Kinzu turned his head and looked at Onid and said, "By the way, dear, don't you have to go to school today? Tomorrow is the weekend, do you want to go to the ranch together?" Onid blushed slightly, then shook her head and said, "No, we don't have to be in school every day. But I recently joined the design team and it's also very busy. Although I really want to go to the ranch, I really don't have time to go recently." Kinzu felt helpless when he heard this. Is he destined to be alone all his life? Now he really wants to regret not going back to the ranch, but think about it, he has already stood someone up once, and it would be really embarrassing to stand them up again. Just as he was thinking about it, the doorbell rang. Kinzu got up and opened the door. The waitress smiled and said hello, then walked in with a dining cart. Kinzu looked at the waitress and felt that she seemed very familiar. After thinking for a while, he suddenly remembered that this was the one who helped him accomplish a good thing yesterday. While the waitress was serving the dishes, Kinzu secretly stuffed a stack of dollars into her pocket as a thank you for her understanding yesterday, and then winked at her. The waitress also smiled ambiguously at Kinzu, and everything was self-evident. After the waiter left, the 2 girls gave Kinzu a sanitary look. Although they didn't see Kinzu thank the waiter, seeing her naturally reminded the 2 girls of everything that happened last night. Kinzu smiled and said, "Come on, let's eat. We're almost starving," and then he helped the 2 girls cut steaks. When the 3 of them came out of the hotel, it was already past 2 in the afternoon. Kinzu looked at his McLaren and felt helpless. Mobika also laughed beside him and said, "Clean, your car can't fit anymore. Let's see what you're going to do in the future." He rolled his eyes at the girl helplessly, and the three of them took a taxi to the Avits International Exhibition Center, where the New York Auto Show was held. After getting off the car, the three of them were deeply attracted by the huge exhibition hall in front of them. There were already enough cars in the square outside, but they didn't expect there were so many cars inside, all of which were all kinds of cars. In addition to the cars, there were beauties, and the sexy car models dressed in various styles made Kinzu unable to recover. He walked in and looked around. In addition to listening to the salesman's introduction to the performance, Kinzu's eyes stayed on the beautiful car model the most. It was not until Mobika couldn't stand it anymore and hit Kinzu hard that this guy stopped wandering around and focused on the car in front of him. This was an ordinary BMW sedan. Kinzu frowned and asked, "Are there any better cars?" The salesman was obviously stunned. Could it be that a big customer came? He looked at Kinzu carefully and didn't have any impression. However, his good professional quality made him not impatient, and he said very respectfully, "What price range of car do you need? Do you have a favorite brand?" Kinzu thought about it, and it seemed that he really didn't know a few car brands. He only knew Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Audi, or sports cars and Porsche. Looking at the waiter, Kinzu said, "I need an SUV. Can you introduce one to me?" Listening to the waiter's endless introduction, Kinzu felt a headache. Forget it, let's go shopping first. After that, Kinzu declined the waiter's company and went shopping with Mobika and Onid. Passing by several exhibition halls, Kinzu was not very satisfied with the models of the cars inside. Either they were too small or too big. Mobika couldn't help asking, "Clean, what kind of car are you looking for?" Kinzu smiled awkwardly and said, "What I need is very simple. I just want a cooler car." Onid heard that and said, "Didn't I hear that there are private customized cars now? Clean, you can go and try it." Kinzu was a little confused. Customized car? Wouldn't it take a long time to get the car? Onid shrugged helplessly, indicating that she didn't know either. Kinzu was helpless. Then he waved to stop a female salesperson and asked, "Hello, beautiful lady. May I ask if there are any special vehicles of this auto show?" The waiter said enthusiastically, "Of course, sir, the New York Auto Show is of course full of special vehicles." After that, the waiter took Kinzu and the other two to the door of an exhibition hall that was surrounded by people. He introduced to Kinzu, "Sir, this is the exhibition hall of Conquest Vehicles, a car manufacturer in Toronto, Canada. Take a look first. If you are not satisfied, turn right when you go out. That is the exhibition hall of Bali. Thanks to Donald Merlin for the reward, I stayed up late to code a chapter. I feel nothing because of the blocking. Please recommend and reward me for support. Si estes escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrás la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 58 Night the 15th. Looking at the Conquest Vehicles logo at the entrance of the showroom, Kinzu said that he had never heard of it, and he didn't know what kind of cars this car brand from Toronto had. He took the two girls and walked in. After entering the door, there was a very empty hall. There were a few cars in the hall, but these few cars gave Kinzu a very rough and heroic feeling. Looking at those square and angular off-road vehicles, Mobika next to him asked Kinzu in surprise, "Clean, what are these cars? It feels so strange." Kinzu also scratched his head. Although he thought this car was very good, he really didn't know what it was. He wanted to find a salesperson to ask, but he was stunned to see the empty hall. Except for the car models next to the cars, there was no one. What's going on? What kind of service attitude is this? Kinzu took the two girls who were also confused and walked inside with a head full of doubts. After turning a corner, Kinzu and the other two suddenly realized that everyone was gathered here. But isn't it said that Chinese people like to join in the fun? What are the foreigners doing? Kinzu squeezed into the crowd with doubts. When the three of them came in, they heard Mobika and Donid exclaim at the same time. Kinzu was also a little stunned when he saw the big guy in front of him. This guy who looks like an on-road vehicle is an off-road vehicle. Is he sure? However, under the introduction of the sexy blonde and blue-eyed white female salesperson who looks like a car model, Kinzu had to believe that this guy who looks like an armored vehicle is a genuine super luxury bulletproof off-road vehicle. This super luxury bulletproof off-road vehicle manufactured by Conquest Vehicles of Canada is 6.1 meters long, 2.5 meters wide, and 2.5 meters high. The shape uses diamond lines instead of the curves of ordinary vehicles, reflecting the square characteristics of armored vehicles. It uses a 6.8-liter V10 engine with a maximum output power of 400 horsepower and a torque of 6,757 kgm. And according to the sexy white female salesperson, this domineering car is called Knight the 15th, which is the civilian version of Gert Collab, which is the car that Dwayne Johnson rides in Fast and Furious 5. Mobica said excitedly, "Clean, why don't you buy this one? This is the first time I've seen such a cool car." Seeing Onid nod in agreement, Kinzu immediately made a decision. He must buy it. Not to mention the girl's reaction, he himself was also captured by the domineering appearance of Knight the 15th. The appearance of Knight the 15th is very sturdy. This military image gives people the feeling that they can break through the siege as long as they rush forward, like a tank on the road. And according to the information in Kinzu's hand, the body of Knight the 15th is made of bulletproof steel plates and glass avant-garde wheel arches and bumpers, and the windows and windshield are made of 64mm thick bulletproof transparent materials. It can withstand NATO standard hard steel nuclear bullets with a firing speed of 820 meters per second and a caliber of 7.62 x 51mm, and can withstand attacks at the level of 15 kilograms of TNT explosives, and the vehicle chassis can also withstand grenade explosions. The more Kinzu looked at it, the more excited he became. He looked directly at the blonde beauty who was wearing a black oil outfit, black stockings wrapped around her thighs, and twisting her buttocks as she walked, and was passionately introducing this super luxurious bulletproof off-road vehicle. He asked, "Hello, ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt, is this car available now? When can I pick it up if I buy it now?" The sexy white female salesperson was passionately introducing this company's newly developed super luxurious off-road vehicle, but was suddenly interrupted by someone and choked for a moment, just like someone who was about to reach the peak but found that the object suddenly couldn't do it, and felt very uncomfortable. However, after hearing Kinzu's question clearly, she had to suppress her dissatisfaction that had just risen. This was directly related to her income. The commission of one car was enough for her to use for a year. She forced a smile and said to Kinzu, "Hello, sir. I'm Ruth, the sales manager of Conquest Vehicles New York branch. There are 2 cars of this super luxurious Knight the 15th in New York. If you decide to buy it, you can have it today." Kinzu also realized that it was wrong after asking, but the word had already been spoken and there was no way to remedy it. He had to pretend to be stupid and pretend that he didn't see the stiff face of the blonde opposite. Hearing that this sexy blonde was actually a sales manager, I couldn't help but have some malicious guesses whether foreigners also popular with unspoken rules. However, when I heard that she could get this super luxurious bulletproof off-road vehicle today, Kinzu was still very excited. I really wondered if the goddess of luck favored me, otherwise why was my luck so good in the past 2 days? You know, it is normal to wait a few months after placing an order for this kind of limited edition handmade car before you can get the car. It is very rare for such a car to be available in stock. I didn't expect to encounter it. Without saying anything, Kinzu didn't even ask the price. He took Mobica and Onid, who were also excited, and followed the excited blonde Ruth to the back of the exhibition hall to place an order. After arriving at the office area in the exhibition hall, Ruth gave a few instructions to a white female employee who was slightly inferior to her in appearance and figure. The excitement finally calmed down. She enthusiastically invited Kinzu and the other 2 to sit on the sofa. After busying herself making a cup of coffee for the 2 girls and Kinzu, she sat opposite and looked at Kinzu and asked politely, "What's your name, sir?" Kinzu took a sip of coffee and felt pretty good. Looking at the blonde beauty in front of him, he smiled and said, "My name is Kinzu, you can just call me Keen." Ruth smiled politely and said, "Clean, this off-road vehicle is a super luxury bulletproof SUV newly developed by our Conquest Vehicles. Its standard configuration will include top-grade handmade wool carpets called Wilton wool, handmade leather seats and door interior panels of Andrew Muirhead, 6-way electric adjustment driver's seat with additional heating device, bulletproof grade dark tinted window glass, and a full set of Alpine audio and video systems and hard disk satellite navigation devices, night vision systems, etc. So its price is as high as $1.3 million after tax. Kinzu was stunned when he heard the price. It was not too expensive, but a little lower than Kinzu's expectations. Looking at the tall and thick body comparable to an armored vehicle, and the luxurious configuration inside, it was only a little more expensive than his McLaren. Today's first update is presented. Thank you very much to Huo89 and Fishang Tianhuang for the 500 starting coins reward. Thank you for supporting Leoon even though Leoon has stopped updating. The after effect of the rice wine is a bit strong. I slept until noon and now the author's head is still dizzy. Thanks again to the big guys who rewarded Leoon. I wish all the book friends who support Leoon a happy New Year's Day and a double harvest of career and love in 2017. Chapter 59 Return to the Ranch, Part 1. Although he didn't quite understand why this big guy was only a little more expensive than the little McLaren, Kinzu still took out his checkbook and wrote a check and handed it to Ruth. The following things were very simple: pick up the car, inspect it, and register it. When Kinzu drove this super luxurious SUV through the city of New York, it really caused a lot of exclamations. Sitting in the wide driver's seat, feeling the comfort brought by the leather seat, looking at the two beauties in the back seat, and looking at the foreigners on the side of the road who were looking at his car with shocked and envious eyes, Kinzu felt a trance. All of this seemed like a dream. However, listening to Mobeka's excited exclamation behind him, and looking at Onid's moving body, Kinzu hoped that such a beautiful dream would never wake up. Just as Kinzu and the other two were excitedly driving the new car and swaggering through the streets of New York, Onid's phone suddenly rang. After Onid hung up the phone, she looked at him with a little reluctance on her face. Kinzu asked curiously, "Honey, what's wrong? Is there something wrong?" Onid said reluctantly, "Clean, my tutor asked me to go back to school now. The project has made a new breakthrough and we need everyone to work together." Kinzu looked at Onid and asked reluctantly, "Are we going back now?" Onid sighed helplessly and said, "This project is very important. My tutor asked me to go there now." Looking at Onid's helpless face, Kinzu understood that this project should be very important, so he looked at Mobeka and said, "Honey, what about you? Do you want to follow Onid?" Mobeka nodded. "As a matter of course, I will follow my senior sister. I came here just to find my senior sister." Kinzu continued without giving up, "Honey, Onid has to go back to do experiments and can't accompany you. How about we go shopping?" Mobeka gave Kinzu a charming look and said, "Then I can continue to do design. Anyway, I don't want to be with a big pervert like you." Kinzu could only curse in his heart. Shit, this time he got nothing, and he wanted to increase his relationship so as to move on to the next step. It couldn't be a one-time deal. But now it seems that this little hope has gone down the drain, and he can only turn the car around and send the two girls to school. The sturdy night the 15th is in our catching existence wherever it is. When the sturdy night the 15th appeared at the gate of New York University, it caused an uproar again. They are all fashionable young people, naturally they will not be like Kinzu who doesn't know this car, plus the Night XV's publicity in New York these days is still very good, so it is still very shocking to see a tank in the poster driving into the campus. Especially when Onid and Mobeka got off the car and kissed the young Chinese, they immediately broke their glasses. Aren't they a pair of famous sisters in school? Why do you like men now? The eyes looking at Kinzu were filled with some strange colors, envy, jealousy, and a little admiration. Kinzu ignored the strange looks around him and hugged Mobeka for a romantic French kiss. He didn't let her go until she was out of breath. He turned around and pulled Onid, who was watching from the side with a blushing face, over and gave her a French kiss as well. After the kiss, Kinzu reluctantly let go of the two girls. Mobeka and Onid kissed Kinzu's face again, and then walked into the campus hand in hand. Kinzu turned around and got on the night the 15th in the eyes of the onlookers, who were full of admiration, envy, jealousy and hatred, and drove directly towards the direction of the hotel where he was staying. Driving on the road, looking at the various off-road suits that were half the height of his car, Kinzu even saw a Hummer, which was also only half the height of his car. Kinzu felt so happy. This is the car a man should drive. The Hummer can stand aside. Arriving at the hotel and parking the car in the underground parking lot, Kinzu ended upstairs and knocked on the door. After knocking a few times, Dale opened the door. Seeing that it was Kinzu, she greeted him a little stiffly, "Boss, I'm done packing here. When are we going back?" Kinzu looked at Dale wearing the casual clothes he bought for her, smiled with satisfaction, and didn't care about Dale's little womanly look and said, "Then let's go now. Go back early, I miss the two little guys at home." Dale nodded, picked up the luggage and followed Kinzu downstairs. Kinzu looked at the garden-style bedroom and smacked his lips with some regret. He originally wanted to take Mobica and Donnie to try this romantic feeling of using the sky as a roof and the ground as a house. It was all the fault of the damn professor who ruined his good thing. Kinzu muttered a little. He had just tasted the wonderful taste between men and women and was a little obsessed with that feeling. After accusing the professor of all kinds of crimes in his mind, he reluctantly went to the front desk to check out. Amid the welcome to come next time at the front desk, Kinzu took Dale to the underground parking lot. When Dale looked at the night the 15th, her mouth opened wide and she shouted, "Oh my god." Looking at Dale's sexy lips, Kinzu couldn't help but have a bit of evil thoughts in his heart. He quickly shook his head and threw the evil thoughts in his head behind him. He cursed himself for losing more and more self-control. He had to hurry back to the ranch. After staying in a place like New York for a long time, he had become a little decadent. After finding an excuse for himself, Kinzu pulled Dale, who was still shocked, to get in the car. Dale finally reacted at this time, regardless of being angry with Kinzu for making her worry all morning, and asked excitedly, "Clean, is this the new car you bought?" "It's amazing." Kinzu nodded proudly, raised the car keys in his hand and said, "Of course, the new car I just got. How is it?" "Not bad, right?" Dale nodded desperately, then snatched the keys from the still proud Kinzu's hand, and went directly to the driver's seat, then called to Kinzu, who was still a little dazed. "Clean, hurry up and get in, don't waste time." Kinzu was so depressed. Waste time, why did he show off blindly? Now it's good. The little wife he just married home was snatched away by Dale. After comparing his own and Dale's martial art values, Kinzu could only get on the co-pilot helplessly. Dale didn't care about Kinzu's helpless expression. She was really a little excited. When she was in the army, she saw these big guys every day, and she didn't think much of it. But after retiring, she always felt very depressed when driving an ordinary car. Now, looking at this night the 15th that is comparable to a steel monster, how could you bear it? After Kinzu got in the car and fastened his seatbelt, Dale started the monster. With a roar, the huge and sturdy body of the night the 15th started moving. Leone has recovered and turned on the coding mode. The first update is here. Thank you for your support. Thank you to 54863 and Kyanamoli's hand for your support. Thank you everyone. Chapter 60 Return to the Ranch, Part 2 The engine of the night the 15th roared, and it rushed out of the underground parking lot like a monster, crushing the streets of New York City and heading towards the New York Hotel. Dale held the steering wheel with excitement, and made a sound of go, go from time to time, which was completely like a little girl racing. Kinzu looked at the car that was speeding up to 100 miles per hour, and his heart was in his throat. Kinzu felt that he was already fierce enough, but he didn't expect that this girl was even crazier than him. "Sister, this is a downtown area, do you want to do this?" he hurriedly shouted. Dale, drive slower, we are not in a hurry." Dale turned his head and looked at Kinzu and said, "Clean, just sit tight, it's okay, this is already very slow compared to my previous time. Quick, get out of the way, hit it." Kinzu looked at this girl who dared to turn her head and talk to him while driving so fast, and he was so scared that he almost went over to grab the steering wheel. Dale turned her head and lightly hit the steering wheel to avoid an oncoming car. She comforted Kinzu and said, "It's okay, Clean, don't worry, this is just a small scene." Kinzu looked at the endless stream of cars outside the car window, and almost cried when he and Dale raced at every opportunity. Is this a small scene? When they arrived outside the New York Hotel, Kinzu couldn't wait to escape from the car. This is his bodyguard. Will he dare to drive her car in the future? He went to the underground parking lot and drove out his McLaren. Seeing Dale's excitement, Kinzu felt that there was no hope for him to return to night the 15th. Should he drive his own McLaren honestly? The two drove, Dale led the way in front, and Kinzu followed in the McLaren. They drove out to the New York Hotel one after the other and sped towards Boston. Along the way, Dale's speed increased to nearly 200 yards, and Kinzu had a hard time following in his sports car. Fortunately, there were not many cars on this road, so there would not be any danger, but Kinzu knew that he would probably get a ticket. It was almost 6 o'clock in the afternoon when they arrived in Boston. Thinking that they would have to get food when they returned to the ranch, they might as well eat here and go back. Looking at the night the 15th in front of him, only the tail lights were left when he was distracted. Kinzu shook his head helplessly. He took out his mobile phone and called Dale. After making an appointment to meet at a restaurant, he drove over. When Kinzu arrived at the restaurant, Dale was already waiting there. Seeing Kinzu come in, Dale blushed and said, "Clean, I'm sorry. I was too excited today. I haven't driven such a cool car since I retired." Kinzu smiled indifferently and comforted her, "It's okay. I know you feel bad, but you still have to pay attention to safety when driving next time." Seeing that Dale nodded obediently, Kinzu smiled and took her into the restaurant. From the fact that Dale had been in the army for so long, she should like that kind of life. However, because of her father, she had no choice but to retire, so she must be feeling very uncomfortable. It would be good for her to vent so that she wouldn't have psychological problems. Just as Kinzu was wolfing down his food, the phone rang. Kinzu looked at the phone and saw it was Anna's. He swallowed the steak in his mouth and picked up the phone and said, "Anna, good evening, have you eaten?" Anna's voice came through the microphone. "Clean, good evening, I have eaten. Am I calling you to confirm that you were at the ranch? We will take a day off tomorrow, can we visit your ranch?" Kinzu smiled and said, "Of course, Manor welcomes you." Just as he was about to say that he was in Boston and was about to rush back to the ranch, he suddenly remembered that they were in Boston, weren't they? So he continued, "By the way, Anna, I just came back from New York and I'm in Boston right now. Do you want to go back to the ranch with me?" Anna on the other end of the phone exclaimed, "Ah? Really? Clean, you're in Boston? That's great, we're just worried about how to get there tomorrow." Anna, who was excited, suddenly hesitated and said, "Clean, but there are too many of us, and one car won't be enough, right?" Kinzu was a little proud, thinking that he had foresight, and said to Anna, "It's okay, there's room. I have 2 cars here, which can accommodate 6 or 7 people." Anna was immediately relieved. She and her 3 roommates and best friends, plus the girlfriends of 2 best friends, had only 6 people, just enough space. So after saying goodbye to Kinzu, she hung up the phone. After hanging up the phone, Anna immediately jumped off the bed and announced loudly, "Sisters, hurry up, Keen is in Boston right now. Let's take his car directly to the ranch, so we don't have to take a car tomorrow." The 3 girls who were playing games cheered immediately. They were still worried about how to get there tomorrow. They were all children who grew up in the city and had never been to a ranch to play. Especially when they heard that the ranch owner Keen was a billionaire who was kind to others, they were more interested. Isa was wearing a sexy bikini and playing games. After hearing what Anna said, she smiled and joked, "Hey, Anna, Keen came to pick you up in person. That's so nice to you. I think you should just go with him. He is tall, handsome, rich, and so nice to you." After that, she giggled. The big sister at the dormitory, Maxis, also said with a smile, "That's right, in my opinion, Anna, you have to hold on to this big tree. Even if you can't be his wife, being a lover is not bad, and you won't have to worry about your life." Anna was suddenly unable to resist, and rushed forward with a red face, saying, "I will strangle you to death. Why don't you be his lover? I think you are good, otherwise I will talk to him." Isa and Maxis stopped Anna, and continued, "Okay, you go and talk. It's a pity that he doesn't like us. He fell in love with you at first sight. Alas, there is nothing you can do about your fate." Anna immediately retreated, raised her hands in surrender, and said, Okay, no more trouble, hurry up and pack up, Keen will come to pick us up in a while." The second sister Ollie, who had been watching them fighting, came out to help Anna out and said, Okay, big sister, call your guy quickly, let's pack up quickly, we can't let him wait for us." Hearing this, Isa and Maxis also stopped and smiled. Maxis took out her cell phone and called her boyfriend Vicky to tell him about it, urging him to pack up quickly. Ollie also took out her cell phone and called her boyfriend. After that, she urged him to come over and wait for her downstairs, then hung up the phone. After the call, the few of them began to dress up quickly. After all, every girl likes to show her most beautiful side to outsiders. Kinzu thought it would take some time for them to get ready. After hanging up the phone, he and Dale ate dinner leisurely, and it took half an hour. Kinzu finished dinner and walked out of the restaurant with Dale. After retrieving his car from the parking lot, Kinzu drove the car, followed the navigation in front, and the 2 ended straight to Harvard University one after the other. Second update, Chapter 61 Return to the Ranch, Part 2. When the 2 arrived, they saw Anna and her group of 6 people coming out. Kinzu drove over quickly and stopped in front of them. He looked at Anna and Isa. Anna wore some light makeup today, which made her face look more delicate. Her blonde hair was scattered behind her head. She wore a light pink back shirt, light blue jeans, and a pair of low-top riding boots. She looked more attractive. Isa continued her sexy style. Her long light golden hair was scattered. She wore a purple sling on her upper body, a purple gauze dress, white shorts, a pair of transparent stockings on her long legs, and a pair of high-top riding boots on her feet. She looked tall and attractive. As soon as Anna left the school gate, a dazzling royal blue sports car stopped in front of her. When she was wondering, Kinzu opened the car door and walked out. Anna's mouth suddenly opened into an O shape. Last time they met, she didn't have a good impression of Kinzu, the billionaire. She had only heard about him and had no direct concept. This time, she saw Kinzu get off a luxury sports car with her own eyes. Only then did Anna have a direct impression of the billionaire. But how could he sit in a sports car? Before Anna could continue to wonder, Dale drove the night the 15th and stopped behind Kinzu. After Dale opened the car door and got off, Kinzu began to introduce them. Anna, Isa, this is my friend and bodyguard, Dale. Then he introduced Anna and Isa to Dale. Kinzu didn't know the other 4 people, so he waited for Anna to introduce them. Dale also greeted the 2 of them politely with a smile, and then stood behind Kinzu again. In his heart, he was muttering, wondering which one was Kin's lover. Or both of them. But Anna couldn't hear Dale's muttering. She looked at Kinzu's friend and bodyguard, with long golden hair, delicate face, fair skin, and a curvy figure that couldn't be covered even in casual clothes. Anna felt lost. She forced herself to greet Dale, but Isa didn't think too much and greeted Dale directly, and also praised her by the way. Sister, you are so beautiful, Kin's girlfriend. Dale hurriedly explained. No, I am Kin's bodyguard. When Isa wanted to say something, Anna stopped her and said, introduce the eldest sister to Kin first. Isa stuck out her tongue mischievously and forgot about it. She quickly retreated and let Anna introduce Kinzu. Anna gave this guy a helpless look. There is such a lazy way. After complaining about the girlfriend who betrayed her teammates, she introduced her eldest sister and second sister in the dormitory to Kinzu. Anna pointed to a tall girl with long brown hair, wearing a tight black t-shirt, casual pants, low-top boots, and a loose casual jacket. It was hard to tell what her figure was like, but her face was very delicate. She said to Kinzu, Kin, this is our dormitory's eldest sister, Maxis Evans, and her boyfriend, Riley Wild. Then she pointed to a tall, blonde white young man next to Maxis. Kinzu stretched out his hand and shook hands with them. Maxis and Riley also shook hands with Kinzu a little nervously. Although Maxis could joke with Kinzu without any scruples in the dormitory. But when they really met, especially looking at the 2 luxury cars in front of him, although he was a student at Harvard and would definitely be able to afford them in the future, it would take many years of hard work to own them. Kinzu looked at their slightly reserved appearance, and he felt very proud in his heart. So what if they were from Harvard? In the United States, only those with money can be the boss. Ignoring Kinzu's messy thoughts, Anna continued to introduce Kinzu, and pointed to a beautiful woman on the other side who was wearing black tight jeans, a pair of high-top riding boots, a black short leather jacket, a very large bust, big eyes, double eyelids and fiery red hair. A white boy next to the beauty, who was about the same height as Kinzu but a little thinner, with his hair tied in a small braid at the back, and looked very individual, said to Kinzu, Kin, this is the second sister in the dormitory, Ollie Morris, and her boyfriend Sammy Carey. Kinzu also shook hands with them and exchanged a few polite words. At this time, Isa finally found an opportunity to speak and said to Kinzu with a smile, Kin, when did you buy that car? The last time I saw you didn't have a car, but only half a month later, you already have 2 luxury cars. Is that the night the 15th bulletproof car mentioned in the newspaper a few days ago? They look very similar. Kinzu looked at the sexy and hot blonde in front of him, and replied with a smile, yes, this is the night the 15th. I just bought it today and drove here to pick you up. You are the first customers of this car. Isa pretended to be exaggerated and shouted, then we are so honored, should we let Anna repay you with her body? Anna was watching with a giggle at the side, but when she heard the topic change to her, she immediately refused to do it and rushed towards Isa. Isa was so scared that she quickly hid behind Kinzu, while still teasing Isa with a smile. But Kinzu didn't indulge her. He grabbed Isa's little hand and said with a sly smile, don't bother so much. There is someone who has come to my door. I will use you to thank me. Anna stopped rushing over immediately after hearing this. He laughed loudly. While laughing, he pointed at Isa and said, Yes, yes, Keen. Isa will be your companion. It's a happy decision. Now it was Isa's turn to refuse to do it. Unexpectedly, she was teased by the two. Wei Wei tried to break free from Kinzu's hand, but she couldn't break free after trying several times. She couldn't help but beg Kinzu for mercy with a bitter face. Kinzu didn't make it too difficult for her. He teased her a few times, making her blush, and then let her go. He looked at the people who were laughing and said, "Let's get in the car and go. It's getting late. We should go back early to have some rest." Everyone nodded in agreement. Kinzu asked Maxis, Ole, and Isa to take the two boys to the night the 15th in the back, while he took Anna to the McLaren. Everyone said that Kinzu's arrangement was fine. After looking at Anna ambiguously, they got on the luxury car excitedly. After entering the car, several people were dazzled by the luxurious decoration inside. Ignoring their exclamations in the car, Kinzu took Anna to sit in the McLaren. Anna was also curious about the decoration inside the car. Kinzu gave her a brief introduction. After everyone was ready, Kinzu started the McLaren and led the way. Dale followed behind Kinzu, and the two drove back to the ranch. The third update, Chapter 62, Villa at Night. On the way, Kinzu remembered that he hadn't cleaned up the guest room in his villa yet. Where would he stay when he got back? He quickly picked up his phone and called Eva. As soon as the call was connected, before Kinzu had time to speak, Eva's somewhat exasperated voice came from inside. "Shao Husky, get down here, you can't bite there." Kinzu was startled, his hands trembled and he almost drove the McLaren into the ditch. After turning the steering wheel urgently to get the car back on the right track, he patted his chest with some shock and asked in a daze, "Eva, what's going on?" After a long while, Eva's slightly tired voice came out of the microphone. "Clean, come back soon, your two little guys are really naughty, jumping up and down all day long." Just now Shao Husky actually climbed to the reception room and was about to bite the sofa. "Your little guy's teeth are too good, not like a puppy that was only 2 months old. The sofa at home has been severely damaged by it. Now I have to watch them all day long." Kinzu suddenly felt a black line on his head. "You can't deal with two little huskies. Then how do you usually deal with calves?" He said speechlessly, "Okay, I'll be home in a while. Go and help me clean up a few guest rooms. We have guests coming today." Eva agreed weakly and asked, "Clean, have you eaten yet? Do you want to prepare food?" Kinzu was slightly surprised. He didn't expect Eva to be so thoughtful, but he still said, "No. We have all eaten. Just clean up the room." After hanging up the phone, Kinzu looked at Anna helplessly and said, "A cowboy on my ranch was tossed around by two little huskies. What do you think of this?" Unexpectedly, Anna did not agree with his point of view. She retorted seriously, "Clean, don't underestimate the noise of huskies. Pets are not like cows, and you can't beat them. If they make noise, you'll definitely be restless." Kinzu was a little confused. Looking at Anna's serious face, it didn't seem like a joke, but are huskies really that noisy? Why didn't he feel it when he was at home? He looked at the sky outside. It was gradually getting dark. Kinzu, who couldn't figure it out, put aside the problem for the time being and stopped thinking about it. It's better to calm down and drive to avoid any accidents. Otherwise, it will be too late to regret. When Kinzu's car drove into Hill Manor, it was already past 7 in the evening, and the sky outside had completely darkened. Kinzu drove the car directly to the door of the villa and stopped. Dale inside heard the sound and opened the door to greet him. Anna was shocked since she saw the villa. The villa at night looked magnificent under the shining golden lights of the stars. The rockery and flowing water in front of the villa looked colorful under the colorful lights, which gave a dreamy feeling. Especially looking up at the starry sky that seemed to be right above your head, that feeling made you feel as if you were in a teleportation world. After opening the McLaren's rotary door, Kinzu and Anna, who was a little dazed, got out. Dale behind also stopped the car at this time and came to Kinzu at several people who also looked a little dazed. Kinzu felt a little proud when he saw the stupid and obsessed look of the crowd, but he couldn't always stand at the door, so he interrupted the stupid state of the crowd. "Okay, Anna, Isa, let's go in. It's still a little cold outside at night." After Kinzu called them, they came back to their senses. Anna said in amazement, "Clean, you'll live here? It's so beautiful here. I feel like I've entered a fairy tale world." Isa said with envy, "It must be very happy to live here." Kinzu smiled but didn't say anything. Should he tell them that he had never appreciated the scenery here? The villa under the starry sky tonight actually brought Kinzu a great shock. He didn't expect the villa to be so beautiful at night. At this time, Eva walked out of the villa. Today, Eva was wearing a black short-sleeve top with a large lace lapel. The clothes were tight, and her full chest was about to burst out. She was wearing a pair of black tight jeans and a pair of low-top riding boots. Seeing another woman wearing riding boots today, Kinzu finally realized that, yes, it is okay not to wear riding boots on the ranch. The grass there is half a person's height. Without riding boots, it is easy to get bitten by some snakes and insects. No wonder Anna and the other 4 girls are wearing riding boots today. Kinzu was a little strange at first, but now he thinks about it. It is probably because they have also studied the matters that should be paid attention to when playing on the ranch. Eva came out and greeted Kinzu with a smile on her face. Clean, the guest rooms have been cleaned up. Kinzu responded and introduced to Anna and others. This is Eva, Dale's sister. She works at the ranch now. Then he introduced everyone to Eva again. When introducing Isa, he jokingly asked, "Are you sisters?" The 2 girls couldn't help laughing. After listening to Kinzu's introduction, Eva smiled politely and stretched out her hand to greet Anna and others. And Anna and the others also responded politely. But looking at the dark night sky outside, Kinzu had to interrupt the people who were chatting happily and said, "Hey, guys, are you going to camp in the wild? Let's go in and talk." After that, he greeted the embarrassed people and walked into the villa together. When they entered the villa, Anna found that as expected, the decoration inside the villa was also extremely luxurious, with a magnificent living room and a Mediterranean-style living room. An open kitchen and a wine cabinet next to the kitchen. Anna was dizzy from seeing it. It turned out that the place where rich people lived was so luxurious. Especially the sofa in the living room, it was really well made, and the bottom was actually a bit realistic as if it had been chewed by a dog. But Kinzu didn't know what Anna was thinking. He himself hadn't noticed the abnormality of the sofa. Kinzu greeted everyone to look in the living room, and then came to the guest room upstairs. After asking for everyone's opinions, a room was arranged for each of the 2 couples, and Anna and Isa each had a guest room. After everyone went to the room to clean up, Kinzu finally had some free time. He went downstairs and sat on the sofa in the living room. He asked Eva next to him, "Eva, where are my 2 little guys? Why can't I see them?" Eva looked upstairs helplessly and said, "I didn't have time to look at them when I was cleaning the room, so I locked them in the room." Kinzu didn't know why he felt like he was in trouble. After asking where it was, Kinzu ended upstairs and went straight to the room where the husky was locked up. When Kinzu came upstairs and found the room where Da Hectors and Shao Hectors were locked up, he pushed open the closed door and was speechless looking at everything in front of him. This is the last update today. Thank you 160515234855581 for the 500 starting coins reward. Thank you very much. Book friends, if you have recommendation votes, please vote for Leonia. Continue to recommend votes to rush to the list. I don't ask to be on the list. I just hope to be in the top 500. Thank you for your support. Chapter 63, Morning at the Ranch, Part 1. Kinzu pushed the door open and was about to walk in when he saw 2 little guys, each biting a sheet on one side, trying desperately to retrieve it with their butts sticking out. The place where the sharp puppy teeth bit was making a creaking tearing sound. Kinzu was a little confused. What was this for? Tug of war? When he was wondering, he heard 2 rip, rip sounds coming over, and then the 2 little huskies somewhat confused humming. Looking up, Kinzu was speechless. These 2 idiots directly tore off a piece of the sheet, and because of excessive force, they did a few backflips and lazy donkey rolls. Now they're looking around in confusion, not knowing what's going on. Kinzu was a little scratching his head. These 2 idiots are hopeless. He coughed twice and indicated his presence. Now the 2 little guys finally saw Kinzu at the door. The big husky brought the small husky and trotted over, shaking their short tails. Kinzu bent down and picked up the 2 guys, staring at Daha and said, "Daha, you are not a good boy, how can you be so naughty? Look at what you have bitten the bed sheet into." He pointed at the bed sheet that the 2 guys had damaged. The good new bed sheet now had a big hole in it. Why does it look so familiar? Kinzu looked at it and suddenly remembered the weird shape of the sofa when he first entered the door. He hugged Ksao and ran downstairs. Looking at Eva, who was sitting cross-legged on the sofa watching TV, Kinzu walked over and sat beside her and asked, "Eva, was it these two little guys who destroyed the sofa in our house?" Eva turned her eyes away from the TV, looked at Daha and Xiaohe helplessly and said, "Of course, there are no other animals in the house except them. These two guys love to destroy things and we can't stop them." Kinzu looked at the sofa that was bitten and had holes all over it. He felt helpless. This was a real leather sofa. Even if he sold these two little guys, it wouldn't be enough to buy a sofa cushion. And it was destroyed like this by these two prodigal sons. He looked down at the big husky in his arms, which was still wagging its tail. He just stared at it and scolded it in a very serious tone. "Little guy, listen to me and don't bite things at home. Now you have bitten the sofa. I won't give you food tomorrow. Do you hear me?" The big husky immediately drooped its wagging tail, and it nudged its head in Kinzu's arms in a coquettish way, and made a whimpering sound, looking pitiful. At this time, the little husky also realized that something was wrong from his brother's expression, and stopped wagging his tail. He imitated his brother and nudged Kinzu with sobs. Before Kinzu said anything, Eva, who was next to him, softened her heart and said, "Clean, don't be mean to them. They are still young. Their teeth should have just grown out and they are in the teething period." Kinzu rolled his eyes. "It was you who accused them and spoke for them. It turned out that I was the only bad guy." Looking at the two little huskies who were still acting coquettishly, Kinzu held them up in front of him. "I'll let you off this time, but if you dare to bite things at home again next time, I won't give you food for a day, do you understand?" Daha was busy wagging his tail and nodding his head, while Xiaohe was still pretending to be nuzzling Kinzu and whimpering. Kinzu was immediately amused by this idiot, and gently slapped its round little butt, watching it look up and look around in confusion, and sighed helplessly, still not as smart as its brother. At this time, Anna and Lisa cleaned up the room and walked down together. As soon as they arrived in the living room, Anna saw Xiaohe looking around in Kinzu's arms, and Daha wagging his tail on the side. The cute look immediately melted Anna's girlish heart. After walking a few steps to Kinzu's side, he carefully put his hand on Xiaohe, and after gently stroking it a few times, he reluctantly turned his eyes away from Xiaohe. She looked up at Kinzu and asked, "Clean, are these your pets? What are their names? They are so cute. How come they are a little different from ordinary huskies?" Kinzu didn't expect Anna to like the little guys so much. He looked at Isa, who was standing aside. Although she was also curious about the two guys, she was not as excited as Anna, and ran to the sofa on the other side to watch TV with Eva. He looked up and smiled at Anna. "Yes, I just bought them in Revere. This guy is called Dau. The one you just touched is called Xiao. They are brothers." He pointed at Dau, who was wagging his tail beside him. Anna looked at Kinzu speechlessly. "These two little guys are so cute. What kind of names are they?" Although Anna was complaining about Kinzu's naming skills, she still managed to hold back her words. She looked at Kinzu and asked, "Clean, can I hug them?" Kinzu shrugged indifferently, "Of course. But you have to be careful. Their teeth are very sharp now. See where they are? The leather sofa has been damaged by these two little guys. I was just training them." Anna was a little embarrassed. So it was really bitten by a dog. She quickly changed the subject and asked, "So powerful? They can bite the leather of the sofa at such a young age?" Kinzu was stumped by this question. How should she answer? Should she just say that they have been transformed by herself and now have wolf blood? Wouldn't she think she was an idiot? She could only say vaguely, "Maybe it's a mutant breed. I'm not sure. Anyway, they are very young now and have very good teeth. Just be careful when you hug them." Anna also thought it might be a mutant breed after hearing this. There are so many mutant breeds now. She didn't say anything more. She sat on the sofa next to her and carefully picked up Xiaohe with her hands and put him on her lap. Maybe Xiaohe hasn't recovered from the sudden spanking, or maybe Kinzu was beside him, so he didn't dare to do anything rash. Now he didn't make a fuss in Anna's arms. Kinzu looked at Xiaohe being held in Anna's arms. The dog's head was directly pressed on her plump breasts. He drooled at the sight, and felt so envious and jealous. When would he be treated like this? Isa's voice suddenly came from the side, waking Kinzu from his fantasy. He said to Isa with some embarrassment, "Isa, what did you say just now?" "Sorry, I was thinking about something and didn't listen carefully." Isa pouted, and her eyes almost went into her clothes. It must not be a good idea. he repeated helplessly. I mean, what are you going to take us to play tomorrow? This is our first time at the ranch. We must have enough fun in these 2 days. Kinzu smiled and said, you'll definitely not have enough fun in these 2 days. You can come here often when you have time. By the way, have you ever ridden a horse? Otherwise, I will teach you how to ride a horse tomorrow. Thank you for your reward and support from 10 years old Worm, and thank you for your reward and support from Remendlaming. Thank you everyone. Yesterday, Liuun fought hard and broke out for a while. I updated 8,000. I thought the collection and reward would increase a little. At night, Liuun dreamed that someone rewarded Liuun with a leader. As a result, when I got up in the morning and looked at the data, the author was dumbfounded. After updating 8,000, the collection was actually half less than usual. Liuun has to review himself and see what's going on. Today, I will update once. Everyone, go to bed early. Chapter 64. Morning at the Ranch, Part 2. Izza's eyes lit up when she heard this. Riding a horse. This is possible. I have never ridden a horse before. I have only seen it on TV. Moreover, when I watch TV, I also imagine riding a tall horse like a cowgirl in that show, running freely on the endless grass. Izza was a little intoxicated thinking about it. She turned her head and looked at Anna. Anna, let's go riding tomorrow. It should feel good to ride a horse in the ranch. Anna was teasing the little husky, stroking its furry head back and forth with her hands, reluctant to let go. When she heard Izza's question, she agreed without raising her head. Her mind was now completely attracted by her. She was not interested in riding a horse at all. Are you going to go riding tomorrow? That's great. I have always wanted to go riding, but I have never had the time to go, and no one has taught me. Maggie's, who had just come down from the upstairs room after cleaning up, said with some joy. O'Leary, who followed him downstairs, nodded excitedly. She was also very interested in horse riding. They were all children who grew up in the city. How could they have the opportunity to ride horses, especially in the vast pasture? It was very exciting to think about it. Anna was awakened from her trance by the voices of the crowd, and reluctantly moved her eyes away from Xiaohe. Listening to everyone discussing horse riding, Anna suddenly remembered something and looked at Kinzu expectantly and asked, Clean, where is your pet Koi? Can I ride it tomorrow? Kinzu was stunned when he heard this. He didn't expect that she still remembered Xiaojin. He almost forgot about this guy. He thought about it. He hadn't seen this guy for a long time. He didn't know how it was now. If she hadn't mentioned it today, he wouldn't have remembered this guy. It seems that his big fish tank plan should be put on the agenda as soon as possible. Thinking about it, Kinzu's thoughts went astray. He thought of his indoor fish tank and Mobeka who was helping him design the fish tank in New York. He wondered what she was doing now. Thinking of the attractive figures of Mobeka and Onid, Kinzu could not help but feel his adrenaline secretion speeding up, and his saliva almost flowed out. And looking at Kinzu's dazed look, Anna covered her face helplessly. He is still a billionaire, why does he act stupid all the time? Especially looking at that wretched look, Anna knew at a glance that this guy must have not thought of anything well, and pushed him hard before others saw Kinzu's embarrassing look. Kinzu was thinking about good things, and suddenly felt someone pushing him. He looked over with some annoyance, and what he saw was Anna's contempt and the inexplicable expressions of others. Suddenly his old face turned red, even with his thick skin, he couldn't stand it now. After secretly cursing himself for having a head full of white tadpoles, Kinzu quickly replied to Anna. Of course, no problem. I'll take you to find Xiaojin tomorrow. Anna felt relieved after hearing this. She smiled at Kinzu's satisfaction. Seeing that he was so tactful, she decided not to despise his behavior just now. At this time, Maggie's and Dolly were already confused by the conversation between the two. Koi. What is that? Asian carp? Maggie's couldn't help it first. She looked at Mobeka and asked, What Koi? Mobeka, what are you talking about? Why don't I understand? After saying that, she scratched her soft golden hair in annoyance. Everyone looked at Maggie's crazy look and couldn't help but laugh. Maggie's heard the laughter and turned back to glare at Rayleigh who was laughing next to her, and forced Rayleigh's smile back. Kinzu was watching with great interest. He did not expect that the tall and big Rayleigh would be afraid of Maxis, a girl who looked so gentle. After sighing at the greatness of love, Anna smiled and explained to them. Maxis, Ollie, haven't you seen the news? And that video, the one where a Chinese rides a fish, I told you about it. Maxis immediately remembered a short video Anna shared with her last time, in which a man rode on a huge carp. Could it be? She covered her mouth in surprise and looked at Kinzu in shock. Ollie, Rayleigh and Sammy also looked at Kinzu in disbelief. They had all seen that video, and they watched it with Maxis. At the time, they admired the man in the video. Could it be the billionaire in front of them? Yes, that's Keen and his pet coy, Xiaojin. Seeing that everyone was looking at Kinzu in shock, Anna said affirmatively. Hearing this, Maggie's and Ollie were both shocked and eager to try. If it wasn't dark outside, they would have wanted to run over and harass Xiaojin right away. Riley and Sammy were full of envy and jealousy. Having money already made them feel ashamed in front of Kinzu, and now they felt like they had been living like dogs all these years. Looking at the expressions of the crowd, Kinzu's vanity was now infinitely satisfied. He immediately began to make promises, guaranteeing that they could ride the fish. Then everyone went upstairs to sleep with satisfaction. Seeing that only Eva and Dale were left in the living room, Kinzu reached out and picked up Dara and her on the sofa, and said to the two girls, "It's getting late, you should go to bed early too. Especially Dale. You've been driving all afternoon, go to bed early." Dale and Eva felt warm in their hearts when they heard this, and nodded. The two girls turned off the TV and went upstairs to their rooms. Kinzu also turned off the lights in the living room, picked up Dara and Xiaohe and went back to the room. He put the two little guys in his simple doghouse and looked at the simple doghouse made of rags. Kinzu just remembered that he hadn't made a doghouse for the two little guys yet. After buying them, he just made a simple doghouse for them and didn't think of buying one. What a dereliction of duty. After making a note of this matter in his mind, Kinzu entered the bathroom to take a shower and go to bed. After driving for an afternoon, he was really a little tired. The next morning, Kinzu was woken up by his biological clock. He looked at the time. It was only 6 o'clock, but Kinzu was no longer sleepy. He got up and looked at the two little guys who were still snoring. Kinzu entered the bathroom and started to wash up. After washing up, Kinzu changed into a pair of jeans, put on a long-sleeve t-shirt, found a pair of riding boots and put them on. He buckled the belt he bought when buying the saddle and fastened it around his waist. He also picked up a wide-brimmed cowboy hat hanging next to him and put it on. Looking in the mirror, Kinzu sized up his outfit and exclaimed, "This guy is so damn handsome." Thanks to the book Friends Kanya's So Sad, Book Friends 141104224312994 and Xiaoyo02 for their rewards and support, and the book Friends recommendation votes. Thank you, everyone. Si este escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a Mundo Fanfic Novelas, significat lo descarga and y subieron sin esfuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo Fanfic Novelas all encontrarás la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 65. Morning at the Ranch, Part 2. After a little narcissism, Kinzu opened the door and walked out. After going downstairs, he found that Eva had already gotten up and was preparing breakfast. "Hi, Eva, good morning. Why are you up so early?" Kinzu came to the dining table and sat down, and greeted Eva with a smile. "Clean, good morning, I'm fine now. When I was a cowboy, I got up earlier than this." Eva smiled and brought a breakfast over and put it on the dining table in front of Kinzu. The breakfast was simple, a ham sandwich with a cup of hot milk, which looked very good. Kinzu took a bite of the sandwich. Very good. After quickly finishing breakfast, Kinzu looked upstairs. It seemed that no one had gotten up yet, so he went to brush the horse first. It is a good habit to do what you think of, so Kinzu strolled out of the door and walked in the pasture. At this time, the sky was already slightly bright, the sun had not risen yet, and there was still morning dew on the grass. The early skylarks were singing loudly in a half-bright and half-dark sky, and in the distant sky, there was a huge last morning star staring, like a lonely eye. It didn't take long to arrive at the stable. From a long distance, you can hear Xiaobai's proud neighing. Push open the door of the stable and walk in. Suzy was brushing a spotted horse inside at this time. Seeing Kinzu coming in, she looked up and greeted him. "Boss, good morning, you're back from New York. Is everything going well?" Kinzu nodded. "Suzy, good morning to you too, just came back last night, everything is fine, how are you? Are these guys still obedient?" Then he walked towards Xiaobai. "All are good. except for Xiaobai, who only lets Eva touch him. All other horses are fine," Suzy said, shaking her head helplessly. Qinzu laughed and touched Xiaobai's big horse face. "You guy, you're really arrogant." Xiaobai arched his huge horse head into Qinzu's arms, looking very intimate. Stroking the guy's horse head, Qinzu said to himself, "Xiaobai, I haven't seen you for a few days. Have you missed me?" Xiaobai seemed to understand and raised his horse's head and snorted. Qinzu's nose flared and he smiled, feeling warm in his heart. "Dead horse, it's not in vain that I love you." After scratching the guy's long and thin mane, Qinzu began to brush its body. First brush it with a soft brush, then brush it with a hard brush. "Okay, it's done." Suzy smiled and said, "Boss, you are getting more and more skilled at brushing horses now." Qinzu smiled proudly and said, "I haven't brushed it for a few days, and I feel a little rusty. It seems that I have to brush this guy 4 times in the future." After saying that, he clapped his hands, walked over, picked up the sweat pad and threw it on Xiaobai's back, put on the saddle and walked to reins, turned his head and said hello to Suzy, and let Xiaobai out of the stable. As soon as he came out, Xiaobai snorted excitedly. He touched his big head. Qinzu was also a little excited. He turned over and got on the horse's back. As soon as he sat firmly, Xiaobai couldn't wait to pace back and forth. Qinzu grabbed the reins and shook them gently, and Xiaobai immediately ran forward. In the pasture in the early morning, a white lightning flashed from far to near and appeared in the half-man-high grass. It was simply a painting. On the empty, undulating grassland, a divine horse, a dragon, a real steed is coming towards you. It turned out to be so handsome, strong and majestic. Its legs are long, its ankles are thick, its hind hooves always step in front of the hoof prints left by its front hooves. It holds its proud head high, shakes its beautiful mane, and walks calmly, majestically, and generously. It finally came, and it was clearly glowing. The light slowly illuminated the entire sky, and it was getting closer and closer to the ground, fighting with the entangled mist. Qinzu sat on Xiaobai's back, feeling the cool breeze come in, with a faint smell of the sea. For a moment, he felt more comfortable than ever. He raised his hand to check the time. It was already 8 o'clock. It was estimated that Anna had gotten up, so Qinzu turned the horse's head and galloped towards the villa. When Anna woke up in the morning, it was already bright outside. I looked at the time and it was already 7:30. I got up quickly and went to the bathroom to wash up. After changing clothes, I went downstairs. When I got downstairs, I saw Isa and my elder and second sisters were already sitting at the dining table eating breakfast. My pretty face suddenly blushed slightly, as if I was the only one who got up late. Isa looked at Anna coming downstairs. She was wearing a pink top and blue jeans, and her long golden hair was casually draped over her shoulders. The blue jeans were tight, making her buttocks look very full. But the riding boots on her feet didn't match well. I hurriedly called her to come over for breakfast. Seeing Anna walking, her hips swaying from side to side, Isa reached out and slapped her when she passed by. Anna screamed immediately, her pretty face blushed and turned her head. Seeing Isa's hand that she hadn't had time to retract, she rushed over with some shame and anger. "You little girl, you're increasingly not taking me, your sister, seriously. See how I will deal with you today." Isa was so scared that she jumped up immediately. After screaming, she hid behind Maggie's and asked for help. "Big sister, help me, the third sister is going to get mad, I'm scared." Maggie's watched them fighting with a smile, and ignored Isa's request for help, eating breakfast by herself. But Anna reached out and grabbed Isa, and shouted with a smile, "Come here, Anna, I caught you." Isa didn't expect that her second sister would betray her. Seeing that she couldn't run away, she immediately pretended to be pitiful and began to beg for mercy. Unfortunately, Anna didn't buy it. Without giving her a chance to resist, she rushed over and slapped her small buttocks that she had no time to dodge, and pinched them with her hands after the slap. Isa screamed when she was hit, and her resentful eyes made Ollie laugh. After a while of laughter, the few people stopped and continued to eat the breakfast on the table. Anna was eating a sandwich, looking at the living room where only the 4 sisters were left, and asked curiously, "Where are Keen and the others? Why are there only a few of us?" Maxis finished the last sip of milk, wiped the corner of her mouth and said, "Eva and Dale went to the vegetable garden. I heard from Eva that Keen went to ride the horse." "Vegetable garden? Does Keen still grow his own vegetables?" Anna was a little surprised. "Does a billionaire still grow his own vegetables?" Asha interrupted and said, "Of course, vegetables are so expensive." It's Keen's own land, why doesn't he grow some? Besides, he doesn't need to take care of it himself. Anna thought about it. It seems to be true. It is indeed safer to eat vegetables grown by herself. Just when they had finished breakfast, Rayleigh's voice came from outside the villa. Hi, Maxis, are you okay? Keen is back. Please reward, recommend and collect. Thank you for your support. The second update is here. Chapter 66 Ranch Tour, Part 1. Hearing Rayleigh's voice outside, everyone in the room got up and walked out. As soon as they got outside, they saw the white figure running in the distance, and their eyes lit up. White clothes and white horses, and rich wealth, could this be the legendary Prince Charming? Kinzu didn't know what everyone was thinking, otherwise he would probably be proud of himself again. He came to a place not far from everyone and got off the horse. He walked over with Xiaobai. You're all up, how about we go riding horses in the morning? Kinzu walked in front of everyone with Xiaobai, looking at the girls dressed in jeans, and nodded with satisfaction. Not bad, at least no one was riding in a skirt. Anna and other girls nodded crisply, but their eyes stared at Xiaobai without blinking, which made Kinzu feel a little uneasy. Kinzu walked in front with Xiaobai in one hand, leading everyone to the stable. After arriving at the stable, he looked at the 6-quarter horses inside and nodded with satisfaction. John was still very efficient. When he came to the stables in the morning, Kinzu found that there were only 2 vacant horses in his family. With 6 people coming to ride, it would be too much to share them. So he asked Susie to inform John to borrow a few of the cowboys' horses first. By the way, he asked him to buy a few more horses. Otherwise, when his classmates came, there would be nothing to ride, which would be embarrassing. Looking at the 6-quarter horses of various colors, Kinzu led a quarter horse of various colors and told Anna and others about the things to pay attention to when riding a horse, and then demonstrated it. Looking at Anna and the others, Kinzu said, "Don't approach the horse from behind. It's no joke to be kicked by these big guys. Even if you are behind the horse's butt, you should put your hand on the horse's buttocks so that the horse can feel you. Don't approach a horse that likes to kick people casually. Ladies, try not to wear fancy clothes, which can easily scare the horse. Another thing to note is to try not to change clothes immediately. For example, if you wear a red coat with a green shirt inside, if you take off the coat while the horse is running, it is very likely that the horse will throw you off. When approaching the horse, move slowly and don't rush at the horse." After a pause, waiting for everyone to nod as if they understood, Kinzu continued, "When leading the horse, pay attention to your reins. Don't make your reins too loose. Don't walk and stop, and then look back at the horse, otherwise the horse doesn't know what you want to do. Pay attention to keep the reins at this length like I did." As he spoke, he gestured to them, explained everything in detail, and then handed the reins of the flower horse to Anna, and then picked a few slices of carrots from Eva's hand and gave them to her, indicating that she should feed the horse first to build a relationship with it. This was also a step that Kinzu usually overlooked. His Xiaobai didn't need to go through so much trouble to cultivate feelings. Seeing Anna happily picking up a piece of carrot and putting it into the mouth of the spotted horse, Kinzu hurriedly stopped her. "Don't do this when feeding the horse. You should put the food in your palm like this, with your palm flat. Look at me." As he said this, he put a piece of carrot in his palm and put it to the mouth of the spotted horse. The spotted quarter didn't bother to be polite with Kinzu, and ate the carrot with a tilt of his head. Then Kinzu asked Anna to take the horse for a walk first. The spotted quarter was also very considerate and followed Anna obediently. Kinzu looked at it, told Eva to watch it, and then took another chestnut quarter and handed the reins to Isa. He repeated the process just now, and after seeing the chestnut quarter also obediently followed Isa for a walk, Kinzu couldn't help but sigh that these ranch horses were really good. Next, he went over to lead the horses and repeated the previous process, and then asked them to lead the horses one by one for a stroll. Anyway, Eva and Dale were watching by the side, so Kinzu was relieved. When Rayleigh led the last spotted horse for a walk, Susie and John also rode 2 chestnut quarter horses and ran over in small steps. After seeing Kinzu, John was the first to greet Kinzu. "Hey, Clean, can you come over here? I heard that you are teaching your friends to ride horses by yourself, so Susie and I came to see if there is anything I can help with." Kinzu was overjoyed when he heard this. This was really what he wanted. If it was just Anna alone, it would be fine. Teaching her to ride a horse is a very romantic thing, but if so many people are together, it is not romantic, but troublesome. After everyone got familiar with the horses, Kinzu called everyone over and prepared saddles for the horses with John and others. Leading Xiaobai, he and everyone came to a flat grassland. Let the horses for a few more laps on this grassland, so that the horses can adapt to the environment first, John suggested to Kinzu after they arrived. Kinzu heard this and asked Anna and others to leave the horses and start walking again. After 10 minutes or so, seeing that the horses were quite adapted to this grassland, John suggested that they could start. So Kinzu first put a side rein on the flower horse, taught everyone how to get on the horse, as well as the precautions for getting on and off the horse, and the postures to pay attention to on the horse's back. John made additional explanations on the side. First, the eldest sister Maxis got on the horse first. She got on well and her sitting posture was also okay. Kinzu let go of the side reins. Use a little force on your waist, or gently pinch the horse's belly, and the horse will go. She learned very well. Maxis on the horse's back was a little reluctant to let go. This is the first time she rides a horse. She is excited with some fear and her movements are stiff, but Maxis's face is full of curiosity. Is this the feeling of a cowgirl? Fortunately, outsiders could not notice her thoughts, otherwise, Eva would not mind letting her see what a real cowgirl is. Seeing that Maxis was slowly walking steadily, Kinzu asked Eva and others to teach the remaining few people to ride horses, just one-on-one, and he went to Anna's side, ready to teach Anna to ride horses. But Anna was a little troublesome here. Anna was not too tall, and the horseback height of this flower horse was about 1.6 meters, just a little shorter than Anna by half a head. She rolled her eyes charmingly at this bastard who took advantage of others, and said nervously, "I'll hold the reins, don't let go of your hands." Kinzu wanted to help Maxis hold the side reins of the chestnut quarter horse again, but when he looked at Maxis, who was happily riding around, Kinzu was a little surprised. He didn't expect Maxis to have some talent for riding horses. "Well, I will hold the bridle, you hold the reins, it's okay, don't be afraid," so Kinzu said to Anna with a pure smile. After walking around the pasture for a few laps with the horse, Anna finally felt better. Kinzu could basically let go of the reins, but he still had to follow, otherwise Anna herself would not trust herself. Thanks to all the book friends for their support. Today is the first update. The next update will be around 11 p.m. This update was written by Leon at night. Please support it with your recommendation tickets. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 67 Ranch Tour, Part 2. After walking the horse for a few more laps, Kinzu slowly loosened the reins and let Anna continue to walk on her own. Anna, who had been nervous at the beginning, had slowly relaxed. Seeing Kinzu loosen his hand, she didn't care. She gently pulled the reins with her hand, and felt the horse slowly move forward according to her will. Seeing that Anna could ride the horse slowly by herself, Kinzu also led Xiaobai, climbed on the horse, and followed Anna, slowly circling the pasture. Anna said to Kinzu excitedly, "I know why many people love riding horses. When you ride on a horse, your vision is completely different. Normal people's vision is so high, but when you ride on a horse, your vision suddenly doubles. It feels very wonderful." She gestured with her hands while speaking. Kinzu looked at Anna's overly lively appearance and said with a smile, "Actually, vision is one aspect. Another thing is that when you ride a horse and gallop quickly, you can hear the sound of the horse's hooves hitting the ground and the wind blowing in your face. If you ride with some like-minded people, that's beautiful. When you can run, we can go out and run together. That's exciting. Then it seems that I have to practice harder," Anna said with a smile. Kinzu smiled and said, "There's no rush for this. Take your time. Anyway, there's plenty of time in the future. You can come to the ranch often if you have time." Anna nodded, and focused her attention on her horse again, and walked around the corner attentively. Seeing that she was almost familiar with it, Kinzu said from behind, "Anna, it's almost done, try to make the horse trot." Anna said in a daze on the horse. How do I make the horse trot?" Kinzu was a little choked, and then he remembered that he seemed to have not taught her this yet. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Just like this, gently pinch the horse's belly, remember to be gentle." As he said, he demonstrated by gently pinching Xiaobai's belly. Xiaobai received the instruction and immediately raised his horse's hoof and trotted. Anna followed suit and gently pinched the flower horse's belly. The flower horse was worthy at being a trained ranch horse. After receiving the instruction, it immediately trotted slowly with small steps. Seeing that Anna was finally able to trot slowly by herself, Kinzu turned the horse's head and wondered how they were doing. After trotting a few steps, Kinzu saw the other people on the pasture. Kinzu almost laughed out loud when he saw this. Issa, Maxis, and Ollie were fine. With Eva and Dale teaching them step by step, they were not very good at the moment, but at least they rode properly. But Rayla and Sammy were different. At the moment, the two of them were like big monkeys, sitting on the horse and having fun. John and Susie were shaking their heads helplessly beside them. After watching for a while, Kinzu stopped paying attention to them, pulled the reins, and trotted to catch up with Anna. Looking at Kinzu who caught up, Anna asked curiously, "Clean, how are Maxis and the others learning?" He shook his head and said with some amusement, "Maxis and the others are fine, but Rayla and Sammy are not qualified. They are struggling, like big monkeys." Anna also laughed when she heard it. Now she has the capital to show off in front of them. Along the path of the ranch, the two rode their horses slowly to the seaside, looking at the beach in the distance that was shining in the sun. The small stones of various sizes on the beach were white like pearls, red like agate, and green like cat's eyes. They all sparkled with dazzling light in the sun. The waves drew soft curves in circles, like arc-shaped hills on the desert, advancing and collapsing with the roaring sound of the waves. On the opposite side of the beach, there was a small island, like a lotus emerging from the water, emerging from the center of the sea. "It's so beautiful here." Anna stared blankly at the scenery of the sea and sky in the distance, and couldn't help but sigh. Kinzu also looked intoxicated. He got off the horse with Anna and walked along the beach towards the seaside. When they arrived at the beach, they found a strange-looking reef and sat down. Anna rubbed her thigh and asked in confusion, "Clean, why do you feel pain in your thigh after riding for a while? How can those people who ride horses all day stand it?" Kinzu looked at the sea in the distance. At this time, the sea was like a bright mirror, reflecting the soft blue of the sky, just like his mood at this moment. He smiled and explained to Anna, "There is a problem with your posture. Don't squeeze your legs too tightly. Pay attention to relaxing your thighs. This problem will occur when you first start riding a horse. It will be fine when you are proficient. You must relax on the horse. In fact, riding a horse is a kind of communication between people and horses. You need to build trust with each other. A good rider must learn to trust your horse and even give himself to the horse at some times." Anna nodded, not quite understanding, and sighed. "I used to think that riding a horse was just riding a horse to run. Today, after riding for a long time, I realized that it is not the case. There are many things to learn, even how to hold the reins with your hands is very particular. I thought it was too simple before." Kinzu smiled and explained, "Riding a horse. You can run by tying a fool to the horse's back without falling off. How can that be called riding? The key to good horsemanship is communication. Every horse is like a person, with different tempers. If you don't even understand your horse, you are not a cowboy at all." Anna looked at Kinzu with some curiosity. "How can you, a billionaire, know all this cowboy knowledge?" As if seeing Anna's confusion, Kinzu touched his nose and said, "I learned all this from John after I came here. Some of it is learned on the spot." He rolled his eyelids helplessly. "I was wondering, how can you, a billionaire, know so many things?" The two sat on the beach for a while. Kinzu was afraid that everyone would worry if they didn't see him for so long, so he stood up and said, "Anna, okay, it's been so long, it's time to go back, so that they don't worry." Anna agreed and got up and walked back. After coming to the side of the horse, Anna looked at Kinzu with some embarrassment. Kinzu laughed slyly a few times, then stood up and came behind Anna. When she lifted her legs to mount the horse, his thick hand once again covered her plump buttocks. When they returned to the pasture, everyone had dismounted and rested there. Seeing Kinzu and Anna coming back, everyone greeted them enthusiastically. Issa looked at them and said, "Clean, when are you going to take us to see the cowboy?" Anna felt a little regretful when she heard this. If she had known earlier, she should have asked Kinzu to take her to see Xiaojun first, but it was too late to say anything now. Chapter 68 Ranch Tour, Part 2. After hearing what Issa said, Kinzu raised his hand to check the time. It was already past 11 o'clock in the afternoon, so he said, "Issa, it's already noon. Let's go back to eat first, and then take you to the lake to see Xiaojun in the afternoon." "Okay, let's go back quickly." Issa could only agree helplessly. She was still tangled in her heart about how time passed so quickly, and it was noon before she knew it. So everyone packed up their things and rode back to the villa. When they arrived at the door of the villa, several people turned over and dismounted, leaving the horses to graze freely on the grass near the villa. John and Susie said goodbye and left. Kinzu looked at the people today. There were really quite a lot of them, so he didn't keep them. After entering the villa, Eva went to the kitchen to get busy, and Anna and Izzy also went to help. As for Dale and the rest of the people, they just knew how to eat. Oh, no, Kinzu remembered that he could cook, but he felt that he had become a little lazy since he came to the United States. After a while, Eva and Anna came out with a tray, and Izzy followed behind with a small pot. They took a deep breath while walking, as if they were eating delicious food. Just eat something for lunch, and cook in the evening. Eva took out the hamburger from the tray and said with a smile. Kinzu smiled indifferently. He knew that Americans were different from Chinese people. They didn't care much about lunch. Generally, they just bought a hamburger for lunch, so they didn't care much about what to eat. Kinzu picked up the hamburger and took a bite. He nodded. It was beef. Compared with the fast food restaurants, the meat seemed to be particularly abundant. It was the favorite of Kinzu, a carnivore. However, the girls obviously didn't like hamburgers. They were all sharing the food in the pot brought by Izzy. Kinzu curiously leaned over to take a look. The white thick soup, with some ingredients, smelled quite delicious. Seeing Kinzu's curious look, Eva smiled and explained, "This is cheddar soup, a very common soup in Boston, made with potatoes, some vegetables and fresh clam meat." As she spoke, Izzy served Kinzu a bowl of white soup in a small bowl. With one spoonful, all that was picked up was dry goods, which made Kinzu's throat move involuntarily. Looking at the small bowl in front of him, Kinzu couldn't help but take a deep breath and tasted a small mouthful. The natural sweetness of deep-sea cold water seafood and the sweetness of vegetables blended perfectly here. It didn't smell fishy, but the taste was really satisfying. Kinzu took another big sip and felt that it warmed his stomach and whetted his appetite. He couldn't help but give Eva a thumbs up and praised, "Eva, your cooking skills are really good, comparable to those of star chefs." After a simple and delicious lunch, leaving Eva to clean up the table, Kinzu took everyone up to the second floor and came to the pavilion next to the sky garden to see the scenery and take a break to digest the food. Kinzu ate 2 hamburgers just now and drank 2 bowls of cheddar soup. Now he feels a little full. Clean, you really know how to enjoy yourself. It feels great to sit here and look at the sea view. Izzy looked at the turquoise sea in the distance, which was as soft as silk and stirred ripples. She couldn't help but sighed. The other people nodded in agreement. On this sunny afternoon, sitting in the pavilion in the garden, looking at the turquoise sea in the distance, the ebb and flow of the tide, is really a kind of enjoyment. This is all built by others. I just come to enjoy it. Kinzu shrugged and said with a look of wanting a beating. As soon as he said this, he immediately attracted a lot of eyeballs and broke the somewhat restrained atmosphere. After all, the shock brought to them by this place was a bit too great. It felt like they were not people at the same level at all, and they didn't know how to communicate. After chatting for a while, they went downstairs at Anna's urging. After leaving the villa, they found a few horses still grazing on the grass. Xiaobai, who was surrounded by several quarters and eating grass, saw Kinzu coming and immediately snorted and trotted to Kinzu. Stroking Xiaobai's big horse face and looking at the surprised and envious eyes of Anna and Izzy beside him, Kinzu felt relieved. He was indeed his own Xiaobai and really understood his thoughts. "Clean, your horse is really smart. What kind of breed is it?" Looking at Xiaobai's agile posture and smart actions, Rayleigh couldn't help asking. He also wanted a horse like this. Looking at his girlfriend's shining eyes next to him, he knew how much she wanted it. "This is a Fergana horse," Kinzu said with a smile as he turned over and rode on Xiaobai. Afraid that they hadn't heard of this name, Kinzu added, "It's the Aquatic horse, which is said to have only more than 3,000 inches the world." After hearing the previous words, Rayleigh thought it was a small horse breed he had never heard of. When he was about to ask Kinzu to help him get one, he heard the next sentence of Kinzu. Riley on the horse almost stumbled and fell off, looking at Kinzu in surprise. "What a joke, is this the legendary horse? Legend has it that there are only more than 3,000 horses of this kind, and each one costs millions of dollars. How could this be it? Is this the kind of horse worth millions of dollars? It's really beautiful." Maxis asked her boyfriend's question with a stammer. "Of course, this is the legendary Aquatic horse. I named it Xiaobai," Kinzu nodded as a matter of course. There was silence again, and only a few clatters of horse hooves hitting the ground could be heard. Several pairs of eyes stared at Xiaobai, and Xiaobai seemed to feel that someone was watching him, and he twisted his big bug coquettishly. Anna looked at Kinzu with a complicated look in her eyes. This is really a Prince Charming, but I don't know who it will be. While the few people were talking, Qin Zhu in front had stopped. He said, "Guys, we've arrived. In front of us is the freshwater lake in the ranch. Xiaojin is in it." Hearing this, several people looked up and looked forward. In front of them, slightly to the left, was a light blue lake. On the opposite bank, there were endless green mountains. The shadows of the mountains were reflected in the water, which looked clearer and brighter. The water surface was like a mirror. After getting off the horse, several people followed Qin Zhu and walked to the lake. They looked at the golden waves on the lake, the reflections of the mountains and trees, and the slight waves in the lake. "Qin, your ranch is so beautiful. Every place is so intoxicating," Aurora sighed and said, feeling a little overwhelmed by the shock brought to her today. Chapter 69 Xiao Hong's counterattack. Qin Zhu smiled and said nothing. Should he tell her that he had been here for so long but hadn't visited the ranch carefully? Qin Zhu himself didn't know that the scenery in the ranch was so charming. Looking at the calm lake, he realized that he had been here for a long time, but Xiaojin didn't come out to greet his master. So he called out to this guy in his heart. He hadn't seen him for a few days, and he didn't know if Xiaojin had changed. After a while, the originally calm lake suddenly rippled. Several water lines suddenly appeared on the surface of the water, which was originally calm, and they were rushing towards Qin Zhu at a rapid speed. Anna and others who were enjoying the scenery by the lake and discussing something with each other suddenly exclaimed. Isa said anxiously, "Qin, what is that? It's so fast." "Qin, is that Xiaojin?" "It's really fast." Anna asked Qin Zhu excitedly. Maggie's and Dolly also exclaimed, "Oh my god, what is this? This speed is faster than lightning." Before Qin Zhu could answer these chattering questions, the water lines had already come close to the few people. At this time, the true appearance of the water lines could be seen clearly. It was Xiaojin who came with several koi fish over 2 meters long. They were covered with beautiful fish scales of various colors. In the green lake, they shone with colorful light, shuttled back and forth, and tumbled up and down vigorously, changing into thousands of fancy patterns, forming a magical pattern. After not seeing this guy for a few days, his colors became more colorful. The black, red and white colors on his body were intertwined, and it looked like a painting by a famous artist. "Well, this is Xiaojin, and the others are his companions." Qin Zhu squatted down and stroked Xiaojin's pure white and transparent fish mouth with his hand. Looking at this guy's fish body that was close to 3 meters long, Qin Zhu was surprised beyond words. Could it be that genetic enhancement is not a one-time thing? Little Jin didn't know what Qin Zhu was thinking. Seeing his master come to see him, he was very excited. He shook his thick tail, and immediately the famous koi fish came around and circled around Qin Zhu's hand. This scene made the people watching nearby dumbfounded. A question popped up in everyone's mind, including Anna. "Is this still a fish?" Looking at Anna who was stunned beside him, Qin Zhu waved at her and motioned her to squat over. Anna squatted down knowingly and looked at Qin Zhu with a lot of curiosity in her eyes. This is really a mysterious man. Not only is he rich, but he is also so approachable. He doesn't look like a billionaire at all. Moreover, the animals are very close to him, as if they can understand what he says. The valuable Akultik horse just now is like this, and now these particularly large Asian carps are also like this. She really guessed it right. These pets of Qin Zhu can understand what Qin Zhu means, but no one believes it when she says it. "Anna, don't worry, Xiaojin is very well behaved, it won't bite anyone, come and touch it." Seeing Anna staring at him blankly, Qin Zhu thought she was frightened by Xiaojin, and said comfortingly. After a moment of stunned silence, Anna came back to her senses, her face slightly stiffened, secretly cursing herself for being distracted at this time. She was not like this at ordinary times. Fortunately he didn't find out. Tentatively reaching out her hand, she touched the fish head that looked like an ink painting. It was a little moist, and it didn't have the slimy feeling of ordinary fish, it was very tactile. Xiaojin looked at it with some curiosity. The two-legged creature in front of her that looked like her master, shook her head a little unwillingly, and wanted to move her hand away from her eyes. "You can touch it, but what's the matter with covering my eyes?" Seeing that Xiaojin didn't give him face, shaking his head back and forth, trying to escape from Anna's clutches, Qin Zhu's face was embarrassed. Xiaojin, I just told you that you were good, but you were just trying to please me. Just wait and see how I will deal with you in the future." Feeling Qin Zhu's unkind gaze, poor Xiaojin immediately stopped shaking his head. He felt so wronged. He didn't have any fish rights. How could he touch someone's eyes randomly? Ignoring Xiaojin's resentful eyes, Qinzu smiled with satisfaction when he saw that this guy was obedient. This is good. If you were obedient, the master will give you delicious food in the future. However, what do fish think is delicious? This is a problem. Looking at Anna, who was stroking Xiaojin, Izza's face was full of expectation. She was also a little eager to try. She couldn't wait to go up and touch this beautiful water elf, but she was still a little skeptical about letting this water elf carry people. Can Xiaojin really carry people? Izza couldn't help asking, and then looked at Qinzu with expectation, hoping to hear a satisfactory answer from him. Hearing Izza's question, Qinzu nodded, without saying anything, and stood up and waved to Xiaojin. Instead of wasting words to explain, it would be better to prove it to her with actions. Xiaojin looked at his master waving, and immediately wagged his tail impatiently, away from this guy who loved to touch other people's faces, and came to Qinzu. Lifting his legs and taking a step, Qinzu sat steadily on Xiaojin, and Xiaojin's body floating on the water did not move at all, as if there was no weight on his body. The people on the shore were amazed again. This actually works. Maggie's looked at Ollie and said, "Oh my god, this is such a magical journey. Qin is so mysterious. Is there anything he can't do?" Ollie nodded in agreement, ignoring the awkward and unhappy faces of Rayla and Sammy next to her. She looked at Anna, who was waving at Qinzu not far away, with envy and said, "I really envy Anna for knowing such a rich and mysterious man." And Izza, who was more impatient, saw Qinzu sitting on Xiaojin so easily, so she followed suit and sat directly on a red-crowned and white koi not far from the shore. Xiaohong, who was swimming leisurely, didn't notice it for a moment, and was directly sunk by Izza's pressure. Shaking her head, Xiaohong came to her senses. Was she being ridden? Was she being ridden without her consent? But Xiaohong is not so good-tempered. Since she followed the boss, she has grown nearly twice as big. In this freshwater lake, who dares to ride on her directly? Except for the last time when she carried a person under the order of the boss's master, no one has ever dared to do this to her. The boss's master is not to be messed with, but this time, without the boss's master's order, you two-legged animal dared to ride on me. Don't look at the unreliable master who named me Xiaohong, but I am really a real man. Xiaohong's temper came up, and she directly gave Izza, who was not yet sitting on her back, a cart jump. Ah! Plop. Crash. Chapter 70. Falling into the water, seeking recommendation and reward. Qinzu only heard a scream, and then the sound of a heavy object falling into the water. When Qinzu turned around in confusion, he only saw a splash of water falling into the water. Before he could react, he heard Anna on the shore screaming, "Qin, hurry up, Izza fell into the water." Qinzu was startled and looked carefully. Sure enough, Izza's little head emerged from the bottom of the water, her face full of fear and uncertainty, and she was shouting hurriedly and panic-stricken, "Help, help me!" Qinzu didn't care why Izza fell into the water at this time, and quickly ordered Xiaojin to swim over. If Izza got into trouble here, it would not be a fun thing, and he would also feel guilty. In just a blink of an eye, Qinzu came to Izza's side. Before he could reach out, Izza subconsciously hugged Qinzu's thigh. After a long sigh of relief, Izza, with tears in her eyes, raised her head and looked at Qinzu, unable to say a word. Falling into the water was not a big deal, she could swim, but it happened too suddenly. And Xiaohong's whole body jumped out of the water, which scared her. Qinzu could still feel that her body was still trembling slightly. Clamping Xiaojin's belly with his legs, Qinzu bent down and put his hands through her armpits. With the force of his arms, he lifted Izza out of the water and placed her in front of him. Fortunately, Xiaojin was relatively large and had been transformed, so there was no problem for two people to sit down. Since Izza still couldn't control her body well, Qinzu was afraid that she would fall into the water again. If she was scared, it would be a big trouble. So he put his hands around her armpits and placed them on her lower abdomen. He stabilized Izza's body to avoid secondary injuries. Fortunately, it was not far from the shore, so Qinzu didn't have to suffer too much. You know, when two men and women hug each other, the feeling is still very strong. After arriving at the shore, Maxis and Anna came forward anxiously to help, and together pulled the frightened Izza ashore. Once they were in a safe place, Izza couldn't hold back any longer, and hugged Anna, and cried with a wow. Anna hurriedly stroked her back and whispered to comfort her in her ear. Maxis was beside her, and brought a dry towel to help her wipe her wet golden hair. Qinzu was a little embarrassed beside her. He turned around and looked at the red-crowned red and white convoy that was still swimming leisurely, and muttered bigly, "You guys made me feel bad, let me see how I can make you feel bad." After muttering, he stretched out his hand to call Xiaojin over, pointing to the red and white convoy that was still stupidly following Xiaojin and swimming behind him. The meaning was very clear to Xiaojin, "You, go and clean it up for me." Xiaojin was confused for a while, and then under Qin Yu's strong emotional fluctuations, he turned around and swam to Xiao Hong's side reluctantly, flicked his tail lightly, and gently patted the big head of the red-crowned white convoy. Qin Yu was furious. "You guy, now you have learned to pretend to obey but disobey." He rolled up his sleeves and was about to go into the water to teach this guy a lesson. Iz's sobbing voice came from the side. "Clean, I'm fine, I was just frightened suddenly. It's not its fault. It was too sudden. I guess it was scared too." Hearing Iz's words, Qin Yu, who was about to go into the water to show everyone a mermaid battle, stopped immediately. Turning back, looking at Iza who was still choking, Qin Yu said with a serious face, "Iza, are you okay? Don't worry, I'll go and take care of this guy to vent your anger." Iza shook her head quickly when she heard that. She was really just scared at the beginning, but now she feels better. Besides, it was she who suddenly jumped down and scared the fish. Looking at Xiao Hong who was still a little confused and circling around Xiaojin, Iza felt that she couldn't bear to let Qin Yu take care of it. Qin Yu didn't pretend to be any more after hearing that. He turned back to Iza and looked at Iza who was soaked. "Then shall we go back now? You should also go back and wash and change into clean clothes." Qin Yu asked Iza who was a little embarrassed. "Yes, Iza, let's go back and don't play this anymore." Although Anna looked at the elf swimming back and forth in the water with reluctance on her face, she still agreed with Qin Yu's words. After all, her sister was wrong, so she should listen to her. Shaking her head stubbornly, Iza looked at Qin Yu expectantly and said, "Qin, can you talk to it? Just let it carry me for a while." Looking at Iza's expectant eyes, Qin Yu couldn't bear to refuse. Moreover, he originally brought them here to right fish today. Now that an accident has occurred before it even started, he felt very ashamed. So after nodding, he turned around and came to the shore, stretched out his hand and waved, and Xiaojin immediately swam over. Qin Yu took a step and sat on Xiaojin's back, signaling Xiaojin to swim towards Xiao Hong. When he came to this convoy with a white body and only a bright red on its head, Qin Yu stretched out his hand to touch it, and ordered Xiaojin to convey his meaning. Xiao Hong, who was a little proud after overturning a somewhat reckless bipedal animal, immediately wilted after understanding what her boss meant. It's over, she's in trouble. However, after figuring out the meaning from her boss that he had helped her to handle the matter, Xiao Hong's beating heart finally calmed down. After glancing at the boss's boss again, who seemed to have no intention of investigating further, Xiao Hong immediately patted the fish's chest and promised to complete the task, so that the guests would come happily and leave satisfied. Feeling the change in Xiao Hong, Qin Yu smiled with satisfaction, and said, "You're sensible. If you do it again, I will use you to sacrifice my 5 internal organs." With Xiao Hong, who had become a good baby, Qin Yu came to the shore and waved to Iza, indicating that it was okay. Iza looked at Qin Yu's gesture, walked over a little nervously, looked at the elves swimming in the water, suppressed the fear in her heart, and tentatively reached out to touch Xiao Hong's big head. Xiao Hong had been prepared to be attacked again, but she didn't expect that this two-legged animal was not so rude this time. Feeling Iza's touch, Xiao Hong also put her head in her palm, looking like "I'm very good." Feeling the touch in her palm, Iza felt a little relieved. She tentatively held the fish head and raised her legs to sit on the snow-white back of the red-crowned convoy. "Thank you, Lei Mei. The most romantic thing is your support. Thank you. Because the company is very busy at the end of the year, it is difficult to guarantee more updates. Please forgive me. However, the holiday is coming soon. Liu Un will stay at home and write during the Chinese New Year. I will definitely guarantee updates. Now Liu Un shamelessly asks for your support. I will recommend it on the main site of Chuangshi today. Although I heard that it doesn't have much effect, I still ask for some support. Something is better than nothing." Chapter 71 Dinner delivered to your door seeking recommendation. When she sat steadily on Xiao Hong's back, Iza's heart, which had been in her throat, slowly settled back into her stomach. Sitting on the back of the convoy, Iza's 2 slender white legs paddled freely in the water, her hands gently stroked Xiao Hong's back, and she looked at Qin Yu with expectant eyes. Qin Yu understood what Iza meant without even looking, so he signaled Xiaojin to turn around and swim towards the center of the lake. As soon as Xiaojin moved, several giant koi, including Xiaohong, turned around and followed behind as if they had received some order, and swam towards the center of the lake in a mighty manner. The splashing sound of water when swimming made the people waiting on the shore itchy. Anna looked at Isa, who was dancing on the back of the big fish, with a face full of anticipation. She knew that it would be her turn soon, but although riding a fish was fun, getting wet as soon as she got into the water was a big problem. Fortunately, it was the hottest time now, and everyone was not wearing light-colored clothes, otherwise it would be a lot of exposure. Isa in the water was full of excitement. She sat on the koi that was swimming forward at a constant speed and shouted to Qinzu loudly, "Clean, wait for me." However, Xiaohong didn't dare to surpass the boss at all, so she could only follow Qinzu with a little regret. Qinzu smiled and turned around when he heard it. Just as he was about to speak, he was suddenly stunned. He saw Isa sitting on a snow-white koi in front of him. The breeze gently caressed her golden hair and fluttered in the wind. She really looked like a character in a TV series. After a little stunned, Qinzu came back to his senses and sighed that he had lost all his peach blossom luck recently. Since he got the system, he has been surrounded by beautiful women. Is this the legendary protagonist Halo? After shaking his head, Qinzu said, "How is it, Isa? How does it feel?" "I was excited for a long time when I sat on it for the first time." Isa pursed her lips lightly, with a satisfied smile on her face, and answered loudly, "Great, this feeling is great, especially it is really novel. Maybe we are the first people who know that fish can be used for riding." He swam in the water with Isa for a long time, until everyone on the shore was waiting anxiously, and then saw Qinzu and the others coming late. After returning to the shore, Anna reached out and pulled Isa out of the water. Seeing Isa rubbing her thighs after getting ashore, she couldn't help but ask curiously, "Isa, how does it feel?" Isa rubbed her numb thighs and smiled, "Very good, you'll know if you try it, but my legs are a little numb after a long time." Anna pouted, a little dissatisfied with this answer. She was a little uneasy in her heart. Looking at the wet Isa, she didn't know whether she should try this new game. However, when she thought that she would be the only person in the world who had ridden a fish, Anna encouraged herself in her heart, "Anna, come on, if Isa can do it, you can do it too." After encouraging herself, Anna came to the shore with the excited Maxis and Ollie who had been eager to try. Qinzu saw that only a few girls came over, and then looked at the time and said, "Where are Riley and Sammy? Aren't they coming together? We will only play this once, and the fish's physical strength is limited." So Riley and Sammy, who were eager to try but were now squeezed into a corner, immediately ran over. Fortunately, there were enough big fish, and under the comfort of Xiaojin, the fish that were originally a little unwilling all honestly carried the people on their backs and went away. Qinzu rode Xiaojin in front to open the way, and the constant exclamations along the way made Qinzu secretly happy, and let you country bumpkins see how we play with fish. While thinking proudly, Qinzu suddenly heard the sound of water splashing next to him, and an extremely loud exclamation. Curiously, he turned his head to look over, but only had time to see a black shadow, and then felt a violent impact on his chest. In just a moment, Qinzu fell from Xiaojin's back into the water. Seeing Anna next to him was stunned. What happened? Two accidents happened in one day, and hurriedly shouted, "Clean, what's wrong with you? Are you okay?" Maggie's and Dolly also looked at each other with twitching mouths. What was that just now? A fish? Ahem. I'm fine, cough. Don't worry, Qinzu was directly lifted up from the water by Xiaojin. While grabbing the culprit in his arms, he coughed and answered Anna. Looking at the big black fish still jumping in his hand, Qinzu gnashed his teeth in hatred. It was this guy who made him drink a big mouthful of lake water and lost face in front of the beauty. Anna at the back asked curiously, "Clean? What was that just now? A fish? How could it be so powerful?" She looked at Qinzu suspiciously. It seemed that she was doubting Qinzu. Could he be the type that looks good but is useless? He had grown so big for nothing, but he was actually knocked down by fish. Qinzu felt a little embarrassed by Anna's strange eyes. He felt aggrieved. I didn't pay attention. Besides, fish are very powerful in the water, not to mention this kind of black fish known for its ferocity. He explained helplessly. This is a black fish, a carnivorous fish in our hometown, a very ferocious one. Oh, Anna and the other two girls and Riley and Sammy nodded together, as if we understood. Qinzu looked at it with a pain in his balls. Oh, your sister, and Riley, what do you mean? If you don't agree, come and fight me. I will give you one arm. Staring fiercely at the black fish in his hand, Qinzyu's eyes turned and he suddenly changed the subject. Anna, the meat of this fish is very delicious. I will cook for you in the evening and make you a very famous pickled fish in our country. Sure enough, Anna, who has the potential to be a foodie, was immediately attracted. Anna licked her sexy lips and asked in confusion, "Clean, can you cook?" Qinzyu raised his eyebrows proudly. If it was a month ago, he would definitely not be able to do it, but now he began to thank the original choice. If he hadn't chosen cooking, how would he break this embarrassing situation today? Seeing Anna licking her lips with an expectant look, Qinzyu didn't keep her in suspense and replied with a smile. "Of course I can, and my cooking skills are not bad. I'll cook it for you to taste it in the evening and you'll know." Maggie's also had a look of expectation. At school, she heard a classmate from China describe Chinese food. She drooled at the time, and Chinese food has been passed down for 5,000 years. Oh my god, I really want to go to China and taste the food from all over the country. Thank you very much for your continued support. Recently, many book friends have been criticizing Liu in the comment section for the low word count and calling him a stud. Liu would like to give a unified reply here. This book currently has only about 100,000 words. The protagonist has just arrived in the United States not long ago. He is a loser who just became rich less than a month ago. Can we expect him to have a calm and indifferent mentality? This book is a good ranch type book, but it is also an urban type. It is certain that there is not a single female protagonist, but it is not a stud either. If there are people who don't like it, Liu can only say sorry. This is the first time Liu has written a book. I care about every comment of every book friend, but it is really tiring to see people criticize the same issue every day. Finally, I would like to ask for your recommendation votes. A new week has begun. Si estás escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significa lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrarás la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 72a. Sumptuous Dinner, Part 1. After talking about food, the girls even had less thoughts about playing around. After riding the fish in the lake for a while, Qinzyu led everyone to the shore when the 6-3 oppositions were invalid. When they arrived at the shore, they saw Isa sitting by the water, with her arms on her legs, her hands holding her chin, her long white legs unconsciously paddling in the clear water, so tempting. When Qinzyu and the others came to them, Isa was awakened. Seeing that Qinzyu had already reached the shore, she quickly sat up and stretched out her hand to pull Qinzyu up. After everyone came up, Qinzyu squatted down, gently stroked Xiaojin's colorful scales with his hands, and said softly, "Xiaojin, you go back first. I will dig a hole for you in a few days, and then you can go in and out directly." Xiaojin rubbed Qinzyu's big hand with his crystal clear mouth, and reluctantly flicked his tail, leaving with his konoyami. Eva watched the exchange between Qinzyu and Xiaojin from the side, and her mouth curled up slightly, revealing a knowing smile. She liked people who were popular with small animals the most. Qinzyu slowly stood up, looked at Xiaojin and his konoyami who were gradually going away, and then looked at his own group of real drowned rats, and laughed a little. Anna was a little puzzled by Qinzyu's laughter, and looked at her body. Apart from being wet, there was nothing wrong. Looking at Qinzyu with some doubt, he asked, "Clean? What are you thinking about?" Qinzyu suppressed his smile, pointed at the man and woman on the shore and said, "Let's go back and wash and change clothes. It's uncomfortable to be wet, and we look like a drowned rat." Unexpectedly, Anna blinked her cute big eyes in doubt, and asked in doubt, "Clean, what is a drowned rat? Is it delicious?" After a long silence, Qinzyu nodded with a strange look on his face. "Well, it's delicious. Forget it, let's not talk about this for now, let's go back quickly." After saying that, regardless of Anna's expectant expression when she heard that it was delicious, he carried that big black fish and walked straight towards Xiaobai. Feeling wet, I didn't feel anything when I was not paying attention to myself during the game, but now that I'm on the shore and exposed to the sun, I feel very sour. There is no time to explain such a complicated question as what a drowned rat is. Anna was still imagining how to make a drowned chicken, until she was interrupted by Dale. She woke up, looking at this silly girl. Dale couldn't help laughing. She was not a girl like Anna who lived in an ivory tower. She had been to many places during the years of military service, and naturally she had been to China, and knew some common expressions there. After explaining a few words to Anna in a low voice, he looked at Anna's gradually red face, smiled cunningly, got on the horse, and followed Kinzu away. Anna blushed and felt ashamed. She touched her pretty face that had become hot, and walked to the flower horse not far away, still muttering indignantly, "Damn Clean, you dare to tease me, you wait, I won't let you off easily." Kinzu, who was riding Shia by back, didn't know that he was sold out by Dale not far behind him. He was still holding the still dishonest blackfish in his hand, and was thinking about how to roast it later. After arriving at the villa, Kinzu first sent Shia back to the stable. When he just returned to the villa, the people behind him had already arrived. They were leading Eva to the stable to release the horses. Looking at Anna, who was riding on the horse and staring at him with sharp eyes, Kinzu was a little confused. He looked down at himself. Well, he was wet all over. He was still carrying the blackfish that had been jumping around all day. The current shape was indeed a bit unique. He should go back and take a shower. When he arrived at the villa, Kinzu first put the fish in the kitchen water tank, and then went back to the bedroom to wash up. When Kinzu came out of the bedroom again, he had already taken a shower and changed into a set of home clothes, which looked very casual. After going downstairs, Kinzu looked at the empty living room and knew that they should all go to take a shower. So he went to the kitchen first and prepared to clean up the blackfish. After arriving in the kitchen, Kinzu looked at the blackfish that was still jumping around, and sighed that it was indeed wild and had such a strong vitality. After sighing, he started to scale it neatly with a knife. When Kinzu cleaned the blackfish, there was a noise from the living room outside. After a while, Anna appeared at the kitchen door with her wet golden hair. Now Anna changed into a classic outfit of white t-shirt and blue jeans. At this time, she was leaning against the door with an unhappy look, staring at Kinzu for a while. This look confused Kinzu. "What's wrong? Is my brother so handsome? Looking at me like this?" In the end, Kinzu spoke first. "Anna, what's wrong? Looking at me like this is very stressful." He rolled his eyes at this guy helplessly. Did he forget the good thing he had just done? "It's okay, I'm waiting for you to make me a drowned chicken." Anna looked at Kinzu with a sincere look. She said word by word. Kinzu was sweating. Why did he still remember this? Just when he was about to continue to talk nonsense with her, he looked up inadvertently and saw the teasing in Anna's eyes. He was stunned. Someone leaked the secret. No, we have to retrieve quickly. So he immediately turned around and said, "Anna, you're just in time. Come, I'll teach you how to cook." Sure enough, when it comes to food, Anna immediately forgot the purpose of coming here, and took a few steps to Kinzu's side, curiously watching Kinzu busying himself. Seeing that he successfully changed the topic, Kinzu breathed a sigh of relief, and ignored Anna, who looked like a curious baby next to him, and began to concentrate on dealing with this big black fish that was more than 70 centimeters long. Knowing that Westerners don't like to spit out the bones, Kinzu directly split the fish in half from the middle, and then began to show his knife skills. The extremely sharp kitchen knife flew up and down in Kinzu's hand, and the transparent fish meat fell into the basin leisurely. Anna couldn't close her mouth when she watched from the side. Is this a professional chef? How can he be so amazing? Slowly, a big fish that was 70 centimeters long was sliced into a basin of fish fillets in just a short while, and Kinzu also picked up the remaining fish bones and prepared to use them later. I put egg white and cornstarch in the fish fillet, added a little salt and cooking wine, stirred it evenly, and then set it aside to marinate for a while. Although the update is not very impressive, Liu still shamelessly asks for votes. Chapter 73a. Sumptuous Dinner, Part 2. Just after marinating the blackfish fillet, I heard his somewhat helpless voice from outside. "Hey, Daha, you two naughty ghosts, give me my slips back." Kinzu put down the seasoning in his hand and looked at Anna. Anna shrugged with a smile and said, "Clean, your hair has a very special taste." Kinzu wiped his hands and walked out. As soon as he walked to the kitchen door, he saw his own Daha, who was impatient, running around in the living room with her, fighting for a furry, blue cartoon version of Doraemon's slippers. In the living room, everyone had taken a bath and changed clothes, and was sitting on the sofa watching TV, while Lisa was sitting on the sofa near the kitchen, curling her legs. One hand was still scratching her freshly washed golden long hair, looking helplessly at the two idiots, who were fighting for her newly bought slips and having a lot of fun. Daha, Kinzu, with a frown on his face, roared very imposingly. It didn't matter. Daha was very obedient. After hearing Qin Zhu's roar, he immediately relaxed and squatted there obediently, not daring to move. Then he began to grin and stick out his tongue, looking at Qin Zhu with an expression of "Master, I am very obedient." He continued to run for a while with the furry cartoon Doraemon in his mouth, only to find that his big brother didn't catch up. The idiot even stopped and barked at Daha a few times. Daha secretly glanced at Qin Zhu and whimpered a few times at his silly second brother. Why can't this guy understand what the master is saying? Aren't you asking for a beating? Come and sit down quickly. He heard the whimper of his big brother, and then he saw Qin Zhu staring at him with a confused face. Now he was honest, his mouth was loose, and he didn't care about the strange cat on the ground that couldn't move. He trotted all the way in the direction of his big brother. After arriving next to Daha, he immediately imitated Daha. Sitting there, with his mouth open and his tongue sticking out, he also looked like he was being obedient. The two funny guys' actions immediately made the girls sitting on the sofa watching TV fall in love with him. Isa was no longer in a hurry to get her slippers. She rushed down the sofa with stars in her eyes, ran over without even putting on her shoes, and hugged the two idiots. Maggie's, who was a little slower, begged on the side. "Hey, Isa, come here, give your sister a hug." Isa looked at Maggie's and reluctantly handed her over. There was no other way, because her hands were already on her. If she refused, she would probably get hit, which was not worth it. Anyway, there was still one in her arms. Daha was helplessly turning around in the hands of the two women, whimpering unwillingly to express her dissatisfaction. Qin Zhu looked at all this with a bit of a smile and a tear, scratching his head. What is going on? Forget it, leave them alone. Thinking of this, Qin Zhu ignored Anna, who had just followed him out and ran to compete for Xiao hectares, and turned back to the kitchen. Listening to the constant noise of playfulness outside, Qin Zhu laughed happily twice. Is it a little popular now? Such a big villa, staying alone, not to mention whether it is a waste or not, it is just too empty. Looking at the ingredients in the kitchen refrigerator, Qin Zhu began to think about dinner in the evening. Dinner can't be solved with just one fish. There are 8 or 9 people, let alone whether it is enough. Just from the perspective of our Chinese hospitality, just one dish is not a big deal. We can't let foreigners think that we Chinese are stingy. However, Qin Zhu looked in the refrigerator. There were quite a lot of things, but the ingredients John prepared for him were only beef and mutton, and there were very few vegetables, not to mention some green leafy vegetables that are not easy to store. He scratched his head out of habit. He thought that he couldn't have a meat feast tonight. He didn't mind it, but the girls would probably have some complaints. Suddenly, Qin Zhu remembered that he had planted an acre of vegetables a few days ago before going to New York. According to the upgraded Golden Land, which has accelerated the growth rate by 10 times, more than a month has passed. Touching his nose, Qin Zhu muttered to himself that some of the vegetables should be ripe by now. No matter what, he would know after going to the vegetable garden. Thinking of this, Qin Zhu prepared to go to the vegetable garden. It was almost 5 o'clock now. If he didn't go, it would be too late for dinner. Coming to the living room, looking at Xiao hectares in Anna's arms and Da hectares in Max's arms, and then looking at Isa, who looked at the two girls with a look of longing, Qin Zhu mourned for the poor child for a few minutes. Who made you small? He ignored the aggrieved look Isa gave him. Qin Zhu asked Eva, who was lying on her back. Eva, are the vegetables in our vegetable garden ripe? Eva was lying on her back on the sofa, curling up her long legs, watching the popular American TV series with relish. Her life was so comfortable now. She just cleaned the house and cooked every day. And she didn't have to cook dinner today, so she was watching TV with a few guests in a very comfortable way. The boss cooked for these guests today, right? Thinking of Eva's eyes, he glanced at the women intentionally or unintentionally. He didn't know which of these guests his boss liked. Eva was watching TV when she suddenly heard Qin Zhu's question. She was stunned for a moment and didn't react to the plot. Qin Zhu looked at Eva's somewhat dazed expression and wondered secretly, wouldn't she get sick from being idle at home? Why didn't she react yet? After asking again helplessly, Eva finally reacted. Eva, who had just come to her senses, remembered the strange situation in the vegetable garden these days. She quickly stood up and said excitedly, "Qin, if you hadn't told me, I would have forgotten that the vegetables in the vegetable garden these days are too abnormal. It's only been a few days since they were planted, but some are almost ripe. What kind of vegetables are these?" Qin Zhu was happy to hear that. Some of them are really ripe. However, knowing that Eva was worried that these were genetically modified varieties, he explained. They are all normal varieties, but my friend have shortened their growth cycle. Don't worry, I have eaten them, and they are fine. Eva was a little relaxed after hearing this. Come to think of it, it's true. How could the boss, such a rich man, be so careless and eat those genetically modified foods? Looking at Eva's relaxed expression, Kinzu was also a little amused. Although the United States has always claimed that genetically modified foods are harmless, few people in the United States really believe it. Therefore, some genetically modified products from the United States have always been exported to China and African countries. However, with the popularization of the internet in recent years, most people have become aware of the dangers of genetically modified foods, and they are rarely seen in China now. How could I be stupid enough to eat them? Chapter 74a. Sumptuous Dinner, Part 2. After saying hello to everyone, Kinzu could only walk out of the villa alone. He had no choice but to take the two of them for a walk. After all, they needed to exercise more to be healthy. But they were lying in Anna and Matty's place that many men envied, enjoying themselves, and they didn't care about him as their master. Kinzu made up his mind secretly, little thing, wait for me. I'll deal with you after they leave. After opening the door and walking out of the villa, he found that it was almost dusk outside. He raised his hand to check the time. It was almost dusk. This day passed so quickly. Looking at the setting sun hanging high above the treetops, the sky was filled with brocade-like clouds, and a large group of skylarks were flying around the clouds in the sky. It was like a scene in a painting, and Kinzu was a little dazed. Not far away, Kinzu came to a small forest not far from the villa. This kind of small forest is not uncommon in American ranches. There are all some naturally grown native tree species, such as the red spruce and fir there. There are also many hardwoods here. The main types are sugar maple, beech, ash, birch, red oak and white oak. Next to the woods is the vegetable field that Kinzu and Diva had just reclaimed a few days ago. Looking around, the vegetables in the vegetable field are colorful and green. Although it is almost dusk, it is full of vitality. It is hard to imagine that this place was a barren land with weeds a few days ago. Kinzu stepped in and found that most of the vegetables he planted have grown. The purple and red stems of the radish show that they are thick and strong, and the leaves are green and lush, like the tail of a big rooster. It is obviously ready to be picked. The cabbage is also growing well, one by one, arching out of the soft soil, white and facing the high sky. The sun awakens their energy accumulated in the rainy days, and from time to time they make the kind of bang-bang sound that stretches the muscles and bones. Over there, leeks sprouted, spinach budded, cucumber vines split leaves, bean seedlings broke through the soil, leeks were green, eggplant vines were full of tender eggplants, half red and half green peppers were like shy, hiding in the dense green leaves, and there were tomatoes and pumpkins. Kinzu was pleasing to the eye with all the green. But looking at the cucumbers, beans, loofahs and tomatoes, Kinzu felt that he should build a rack for them, otherwise they would have to lie on the ground to grow. He walked over and pulled up 2 carrots to take a look. Not bad. Juicy big carrots, I can give Xiaobai a snack tomorrow. Recently, I have been feeding the small plot planted by John's family, which can hardly keep up with the horse's consumption. I pulled up a few radishes and potatoes, cut a small batch of leeks, and got a few small cabbages. When Kinzu entered home, he already had a basket full of vegetables in his hand, green and emerald, yellow and shiny, and red and oily. Walking on the way back to the villa, looking at the orange sunset in the sky, it was close to the horizon. In the western half of the sky, purple clouds with gold edges floated. After returning to the villa, Kinzu did not say hello to the people who were watching TV and chatting, but went straight into the kitchen. Today, he wanted to show off his skills to these foreigners and let the Chinese food conquer them. After arriving in the kitchen, Kinzu washed all the vegetables he picked, put them aside to drain the water, and then started to make a fire to cook. First, he found the sauerkraut fish seasoning package bought in Boston. It was more convenient and easy to use this. After pouring olive oil into the hot pot, Kinzu opened the seasoning package, poured the sauerkraut and ginger directly into the pot and stir-fried them, then added water, and then put in the fish bones to make soup. When the soup boiled, he took out the fish bones, put them in a bowl on the side, and directly put the thin fish meat in. After a busy day, the first pickled fish was finally ready. Kinzu couldn't help swallowing his saliva as he smelled the sour and spicy smell that tempted his appetite. Kinzu suppressed the idea of trying the dishes for them first, and took out beef from the refrigerator and made beef stew with potatoes and stir-fried beef. Thinking that they were all foreigners, he was afraid that they would not be used to it, so he took out the clams prepared by John from the refrigerator and made a spicy stir-fried clams. After working for more than 2 hours, he looked at the time and it was already 7 o'clock. They must be starving, so when Kinzu turned around and was about to go out to announce that the meal was ready, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. The kitchen door was already full of people. Anna and Maxes were holding the big and 2 huskies, standing at the front with expectation on their faces. Isa and Dolly sniffed and stood on the left and right with an intoxicated look. Riley and Sammy squeezed in next to Ola because they were guests, not caring about their status as men at all, looking inside and swallowing their saliva. Eva and Dale were at the end, anxiously looking inside. Even the 2 idiots looked silly with their tongues sticking out and drooling. "What are you doing? Are you scaring people to death?" Kinzu patted his chest exaggeratedly, as if he was frightened by you, but no one paid attention to him at this time, and ignored him magnificently. Anna sniffed hard, smelling the tempting aroma that was still in the air, and her stomach started to growl. This sound seemed to open Pandora's box, and a series of gurgling sounds came over. Everyone blushed, and after a long time of pushing and shoving, Anna was finally pushed out. She asked shyly, "Clean, what did you cook? It smells so good. Can we eat it?" Everyone pricked up their ears immediately after hearing this, including Dale, who couldn't help but want to start eating. It smelled so good. She had eaten Chinese food before, but why didn't it smell so good? Well, they are all authentic Chinese dishes. They are ready now. Let's all go to the restaurant. We will be ready to eat soon. Kinzu was speechless by everyone. Although he was also very curious about why the food smelled much better today than before, it was not so exaggerated. And he himself hadn't eaten it before, so how could he know if it was delicious? After everyone came to the restaurant and sat down, Kinzu started to serve the dishes. The first one to come up was of course the pickled fish. When Kinzu brought the pickled fish with a sour and spicy aroma to the table, everyone couldn't help swallowing their saliva again. Anna licked her lips greedily. Although she didn't eat river fish much, this fish smelled so good. Kinzu looked at everyone's performance with a smile. This was a bit too exaggerated. He turned around and brought up the beef stew with potatoes. The sound of swallowing saliva came again. Stir-fried beef, boiled pork slices, stir-fried beef tenderloin, spicy and sour potato shreds, garlic vermicelli and cabbage, and a spicy and sour cucumber. Add a fish head and tofu soup. There were 9 people eating in total. Kinzu managed to prepare 8 dishes and 1 soup. He smiled with satisfaction. "Brother, this is the top treatment for you. Thank you very much. It seems that OWO Latin America has given great support with rewards. Liuun loves you." I continue to spit blood to ask for recommendations and rewards. Chapter 75 Popular Vegetables. When all the dishes were served, Kinzu entered the wine cabinet, opened 2 bottles of red wine, and came over. After pouring a glass for everyone in a goblet, he sat down next to Anna. Looking at the table full of delicious food, smelling the aroma of food floating in the air, and looking at the expressions of everyone who looked like you should start eating quickly, Kinzu smiled and picked up the chopsticks and said, "Everyone, don't just look at it. Try it. I don't know if it suits your taste." Hearing what Kinzu said, everyone stopped pretending to be polite. They had been hungry for a long time. At first, they didn't feel it, but smelling the tempting aroma and looking at the table full of delicious food, they felt that their stomachs were not their own. If it weren't for the consideration that this was in someone else's house, Anna would have wanted to reach out and grab it. So they all picked up the tableware that Kinzu had specially prepared in front of them and started eating. However, to Kinzu's surprise, Anna and Dale actually chose to use the chopsticks he had specially prepared to eat. Seeing Kinzu's surprised look, Anna picked up the chopsticks awkwardly and said, "Haha, when I was in Boston, I often went to Chinese restaurants to eat. I like Chinese dishes very much." Kinzu nodded in understanding. Fortunately, he began to consider that someone might use chopsticks, and specially prepared a pair of knives and forks and a pair of chopsticks for each person. It was just that he didn't expect it would be the 2 of them. Anna would stop to explain to Kinzu, but Dale ignored Kinzu's eyes, picked up the chopsticks, and decisively picked up a piece of tender pickled fish fillet and put it into her mouth. As soon as the fish fillet entered her mouth, Dale couldn't help but squint her half-open starry eyes. This kind of fish was something she had never eaten before. The thin fish fillet melted in her mouth. There were neither fish bones as she imagined, nor the so-called earthy smell of river fish. Instead, it was a sour, spicy and refreshing feeling. I couldn't help but give Qin a thumbs up and praised him. Qin, your cooking skills are really good. I never thought that the Asian carp that is rampant is so delicious. It seems that we can't shoot this kind of fish at will in the future. It's a waste. Thinking of the many big fish that were shot in the past, and comparing it with the delicious food now, Dale's heart was bleeding. It was a naked waste. It would be great if they were all made into food. Anna picked up a chopstick of shredded potatoes and praised them. Qin, your cooking skills are really great, but why does your Chinese food feel different from the Chinese restaurant in Boston? After chewing the shredded potatoes in her mouth, she felt that even the potatoes were different from those in other places. It was refreshing to eat, and she felt like she couldn't stop. Of course. After all, when opening a restaurant, you still have to cook dishes to suit the tastes of the locals. Although Chinese food is good, not many people like it. They think the taste is too strong, so some restaurants have to make Chinese food sweet and sour. Qin recalled the lunch he had at a Chinese restaurant in Boston that was doing good business last time. The dish that was supposed to be spicy tasted was cooked sweet and spicy. This is also a kind of sadness of Chinese food. Why don't those Western restaurants change the taste to cater to our local people? But it is true that Americans are not used to eating greasy things. They only eat fried, grilled, and deep-fried food. Unlike domestic dishes, vegetarian dishes are okay, but meat dishes are greasy. So the dishes he made today were not very greasy, but even so, Maggie's and the others only ate a few meat dishes, and more often they ate other vegetarian dishes. Anna and Dale liked some meat dishes more. They ate a lot of pickled fish and beef. They especially liked stir-fried beef fillet. Qin couldn't help but eat a little more of the beef fried with green peppers he grew himself. After tasting several dishes one by one, Qin had to confirm a fact, that is, the vegetables he grew and modified from seeds tasted very good. No wonder the foodies who had never eaten Chinese food praised today's meal. Qin really thought that his cooking skills had reached the pinnacle. After a little disappointment, Qin picked up the red wine in front of him, stood up and said, "I'm really happy to sit down and eat with you all today. This is when I just came to this strange country. We all just met, and we are not even familiar with each other, but it doesn't matter. There is an old saying in China, if you are destined to meet, you will meet even if you are thousands of miles apart. Since we are all sitting here today, it is a kind of fate. I will toast you here first. I will drink it first as a respect." After saying this, Qin raised his head and drank a whole glass of red wine. He was really happy today. He just came to a strange country and was surrounded by some strangers. In fact, his heart was very empty. Especially living alone in this huge villa, no matter what, he is very happy to have some familiar people to accompany him now, no matter what the reason for meeting them is. These words made everyone excited. The reason why they followed Anna to come here at the beginning was because they wanted to meet a big man, but they didn't expect that this big man was so young and so approachable. Especially since he personally took them to visit the ranch, and now he even cooked for them, everyone felt a little flattered. Anna was the first to speak. "Qin, just as you said, since we are sitting together, it means fate, I will drink it too." After that, she raised her head and drank it all. However, it may be because she rarely drinks and drank it quickly, and she choked a little. Seeing Anna covering her mouth and coughing a few times, Qin quickly picked up the napkin and handed it to her. After saying thank you, Anna gently wiped her mouth, and after watching the rest of the people drink it all, she sat down with everyone. The meal was not finished until after 9 o'clock in the evening. Several people drank 5 bottles of red wine, and now they are a little dizzy. Several girls are a little staggering when they walk. After saying good night to Qin, they all staggered upstairs to take a shower and go to bed. As for the messy restaurant left, who cares? Anyway, Qin knows that he doesn't need to clean it up. Fortunately, Qin knew that there were 2 ancestors at home. He dragged his dizzy head and went to get some milk for her, and then picked them up from the sofa. After returning to the room, Qin put Aha and her, who were already too hungry to struggle, on the ground, divided the milk equally between the 2 guys, and watched them wolfing down the food. Qin got up and went to the bathroom to wash up. "I'm really sorry that the update is not strong. It is the end of the year and I'm too busy at work. I will be on vacation in a few days. Then we will have time to write. Here I would like to explain to you all why foreigners love Chinese food. That is because the vegetables grown by the protagonist are good, so you don't have to worry about why foreigners must love Chinese food. Everyone likes good things. Finally, I ask for recommendations and rewards. Although Leona's not strong, I still shamelessly ask you all to help, otherwise there will be no passion. Fin est captulo much as great as Pelaga has to el final. No esse indeed I'll like busgasms contenido exclusivo ixo in medito. Si scrubatinus teropatrian. Recurda, card alike, si scripsino donaking nos anima continued. Great as a todos nos vemos on Alpsmodo.